A Thursday edition of the Sports Bash starts right now. I'm your host, Mike Gill. What's up, everybody? Josh Henning is producing today's show. You out there, we've got a lot going on. NBA back tonight. Sixers take on the Celtics. You can listen to the game on 97.3 ESPN. The Big Three is back, baby. Get excited. Joel Embiid, Paul George, Tyrese Maxey. They'll get you reinvested. I guarantee it. Maybe not. We'll discuss. Keith Smith later on. Second half of the basketball season gets underway. What are some of the stories you hear? The Victor Wembanyama out for the rest of the year. Blood clot, which clouds some things up for the Sixers. I'll explain. Also, the Philadelphia Phillies open spring training portion of their schedule. The Grapefruit League is what they call it. That starts on Saturday. We're going to have some key questions with Todd Zolecki, covers the Phillies for MLB.com, Phillies.com. He is down in Clearwater. How possible is it that Trea Turner on opening day will be the Phillies leadoff man? And if that's the case, who's number two? We'll talk to Todd Zolecki coming up at the bottom of this hour here on the Sports Bash Live. Also, Andrew DiCecco has football at 4. We've got the Nuggets today. And, of course, you guys out there all day long hitting us hard on the text board, 609-403-0973. 609-403-0973. We got a lot to get into. One of the things is, and we're going to talk to DiCecco about this later, I don't know if you guys saw the news today, if you went to 97.3ESPN.com, or if you had the free mobile app, you got the alert sent to you. Cam Jurgens had back surgery today. So what does that mean? The big thing for me on that is Cam Jurgens, he did not play in the NFC, or they did not want him to play in the NFC Championship game. He did not start the game. He was active. So it sounds like, according to Adam Schefter, that this was essentially him trying to alleviate some of the pain. In other words, he probably has some sort of nerve pain, and that is a rough one, man. You get back problems, that worries me. And I'm not suggesting that his career is in doubt or jeopardy. They're saying he should be back for the start of the training camp. But what I will say is this. They need to now put focus on the backup center position. That is something I think you have to pay attention to. For years, you had a warrior out there in Jason Kelce. And listen, I'm not saying that Jurgens went out and played with this injury. So what I am saying is, what happened when Jurgens didn't play center last year? What happened in the NFC Championship game? You moved Landon Dickerson to center, and he did an admirable job. The problem was Landon Dickerson couldn't get through the game either, so you had to go back to Jurgens. But here's the thing. Let's put the pieces together. Let's say Mekhi Becton leaves. Then what? Tyler Steen probably plays right guard. Well, when Jurgens didn't play center, Dickerson did. Who played left guard? Steen. So it's kind of a little bit of a domino effect here. If Jurgens is bothered by this back, and let's say somewhere in the middle of the season he has a little back problems, has to miss a game or two. I don't know. I'm just trying to be extra cautious with a back injury. You have a back injury. Hey, we all have a friend who has a back problem, right? Those people are a pain in the ass sometimes, right? Their back always hurts. And it's not their fault. I'm not blaming them, but, oh, man, my back hurts. Oh, man. Imagine getting back surgery. Cam Jurgens got back surgery. To me, you now have to really focus on that position because I can't count on Cam Jurgens getting through seasons. I don't know. I hope he does, but I'm just giving you something that, hey, listen, when a team wins a Super Bowl and you are looking to figure out what to do to go back-to-back, now I have a guy who just got back surgery. I think that's a pretty important position to make sure I have some depth. Am I wrong about this? I don't know. Because, look, the way I look at it is, let's say Becton walks. Now Steen's the right guard. And let's say Jurgens, his back flares up and he has to miss a couple of weeks just to kind of try to get that pain down. if Dickerson is your backup center, which I don't think is going to be the case. I think they actually have to they already released Nick Gates. He was a veteran player. And the hard part is bringing a veteran player in to be the backup when they know they're the backup. Now, do you have someone that you can draft? The problem is, do you want to put draft capital into a spot where you already have a young player? So it's a weird situation here. But if you also go in and say, hey, Landon Dickerson is going to be the backup center. Okay, if Dickerson plays center, then now you need someone to play left guard because Tyler Steen is now playing right guard potentially. So there's a couple dominoes that come because of this. So I definitely think it's more than just, he's getting back surgery and it's no big deal. Anytime you get back surgery, that's a big deal. Back surgery, neck surgery, any surgery, but those two particularly seemingly have lasting, lingering effects sometimes, So that is one thing. I saw the news that came down about 11 o'clock this morning. Adam Schefter put out the tweet on social media that Juergens did get back surgery, and they're predicting that he will be back in July when training camp starts. But, and I don't know what offensive linemen do during mini camps and all those things, but he will not be a part of that stuff. He will likely be back sometime in July and start with training camp. That's the best case scenario. Hey, you're back in July, ready to go. And the Philadelphia Eagles, like nothing happened. Their offensive line is back intact. You've got Mailata, you've got Dickerson, you've got Juergens, you've got whoever's going to play right guard, and you've got the Lane Johnson playing right tackle. But if, in fact, something happens with this back surgery, or he gets the back surgery, he's ready to play, and then somewhere in the season this thing flares up, now you have a situation of, now what, okay? Because they just don't have a backup center on the roster. As you said, you're in the NFC Championship game. Think about this. You are in the NFC Championship game, and you had to play a guy at center who, to my knowledge, maybe has snapped the ball at the NFL level one time. Now, I know Landon Dickerson played center in college, but that was 3 or 4 years ago. They had no other option that they felt comfortable with to where they had a established Pro Bowl level left tackle and said, sorry, we need to move you to play center for the day because we have no other options here. I don't think they want to go back down that road of you're in a game of that height, I got to move my left guard and move him to play center for the day. And heck, he didn't get through the game. So I'm going to put that on the list of things that are important this offseason for the Philadelphia Eagles. All right, Josh, you were off yesterday. Welcome back. How was your day off?
Busy.
Yep.
Yeah. So, first of all, Dickerson has played a total of 7 NFL snaps for the NFC Championship game. 7.
Yeah, I know it wasn't all that much.
So, it's the equivalent of saying, hey, Mike, what do you know about a Lamborghini? And you might say, well, I've seen one. I might have sat in one.
Well, I mean, I would say this. He did play college center, so he has some experience there. Right. He is not like, hey, you've never played there before, we're just moving. But in the NFL, on this team, he has very little experience.
Correct.
Not to mention, he is one of the best left guards in the league. You don't want to just say, hey, I have one of the best left guards in the league. I just want to move him over for the afternoon.
Right.
You want to keep him there, but they just didn't have another option. So I think they need to certainly invest or look into another option when your starting center has now got back surgery.
Absolutely. And to me, it's not just the back surgery. It's just the in general reality that overall, you were very fortunate to not have any crazy injuries this year, right? I mean, yeah, you lost A.J. Brown for 3 games. You didn't have Dallas Goedert for several games. You didn't have Mailata for 4 games. But you didn't lose anyone for the entire season. Almost everyone except for Nakobe Dean came back from an injury at some point. So you need to invest because there's no way you are going to be able to depend on that again next year. Just the odds are against you.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. It's pretty far-fetched to think that you are not going to have somebody, get hurt where someone's going to have to play extended time that generally, and look, in the past, that has been something that has wrecked Eagles seasons.
Yep.
When they have had talented teams, what happens to those talented teams? Generally, Andy Reid's last year, like 4 of the 5 starting offensive linemen ended up getting hurt for them, and that just wrecked their season. A couple of years ago, during one of Doug Peterson's season, they had a lot of injuries up front on the offensive line. So, yeah, I don't want to see this to be the start. Hopefully, Juergens is okay. Apparently, he got surgery this week on Tuesday. And the way it was described was to alleviate some of the pain that he was having. So I think he was having some nerve discomfort, like that I guess he probably got shot up and played through. But listen, it was bad enough that he didn't start the game. They wanted to be cautious enough that he didn't start the game.
And listen, I don't have his x-rays. I don't know his medical history, but I
thought that's what you were doing yesterday on your day off, tracking those down.
Sorry, I was not. But I do know from my own experience with back issues, I know you like to joke, Mike, about all my injury history, but I did dislocate the L3 in my spine years ago. And, if you don't get it fixed or taken care of, you have a lot of problems. Now, I was fortunate I didn't need to get surgery done, but for about 2 months, I hated my life, basically.
Anything back-related is anybody who has dealt with somebody who has back problems. It's a big problem.
So what happens is
back problems are something that linger.
Yeah. So just to give people a visual, your nerve.
I don't know that anybody wants this visual. I got to be honest with you.
Well, they're getting it anyway. So
I have the power to say they're not getting this. I don't know that I want this visual.
Well, just a general summary, your nerve system runs all the way down your spine. So if anything is off, something might be a little off 1 inch, let's say, in either direction, you can have a nerve pinch. So sometimes you have to go in there and fix whatever might be off.
Yeah, that doesn't sound entertaining. I'm trying to entertain people.
And I'm trying to inform.
Yeah, well, I don't think the informing part is winning anybody over in this instance here. This sounds painful. I don't want to hear anymore. Juergens got surgery, and that's where we are. We now know that they, in my opinion, need to do something at that position. They can't go in with what they had last year. So that's kind of at the top of the list of Eagles offseason stuff. 609-403-0973. Couple of text messages coming in. Here's Jeff, who says 3 things the Eagles could do to repeat. Trade for Myles Garrett. Yeah, they could do that. I don't think it's far-fetched to think that they will try. How about this? I just saw this come across. The Chargers are expected to release Joey Bosa.
Joey Bosa also has an injury history, which doesn't help.
Which is one of the reasons why they probably are willing to release him, because
Joey
they have to pay him a
was
ton of money, and he's not ever healthy.
Earlier this week when Graziano named his 3 players who could be salary cap casualties, Bosa was one of the 3.
Which is basically why I'm saying that the Chargers are going to release him. Did you take the whole day off yesterday, or did you just take some of the day off? I think that's why the topic came up, is I just said that Bosa was getting released by the Chargers.
I understand. What I'm saying is that was one of the names that was pointed to earlier this week.
What were the other 2 would be more information, not the one I already said. Who were the other 2?
Darius Slay.
Okay.
Which I wrote about at 97.3 ESPN.com, and the Bengals' T. Higgins.
Yeah, Higgins is an interesting one. We know the whole story. They might want to franchise him. He's out there. But Slay and Bosa, Slay is injury age related.
Right.
Bosa more injury related. Higgins is a guy who's financial related. They're all financial to some extent, but you would pay a guy if he was younger. You would pay a guy if he wasn't hurt so much. Higgins doesn't really have any of the problems there. That being said, trade for Myles Garrett. Let's address that one real fast. Is it a possibility? Sure. We went through some of the trade possibilities, Bill Barnwell's piece over at ESPN.com. I don't see a great trade. Now, I'm not Howie Roseman. They don't have great draft capital in this particular draft. They have a 32nd pick. That's not going to get it done. You could trade next year's number 1 pick. Well, if you are Cleveland, do you want pick 32? And then let's say Cleveland is projecting that the Eagles are a Super Bowl contender. Now I'm getting pick 32, 31, 30, 29, somewhere in that range. Not all that appealing. I probably can get that level of offer from somebody else who has better picks. The next question would be, do I have a player that I can throw into the deal that is attracted to Cleveland? And quite frankly, we cannot find one that makes a lot of sense unless you're like, hey, we'll give you Nolan Smith. Are you okay giving up a player of that magnitude to get Myles Garrett? So the Garrett thing, yes, I think they're interested or will be interested. Yes, I think Roseman will call. Yes, I wouldn't be surprised if he figured out a way. I just so far haven't found one that makes me think Cleveland would not get a better offer.
Yeah, I'm assuming Cleveland can get a better offer, but then again, I might be wrong because, there's a lot of nuance that goes into these trade conversations, as we know. For all we know, Cleveland could put Garrett's name out there, which, by the way, they have said they don't want to trade him anyway, but they're being forced into it.
Mm-hmm.
They could go out there and be like, well, we're not getting the offers we want. And maybe that's where Howie Roseman jumps in and he's like, well, I'm going to give you an offer that no one's offering you. Kind of like, come in there as like a sidewinder. Yeah,
I think the question will be how many teams, and Bill Barnwell wrote a piece over at ESPN.com about which teams are legitimate, and all the teams that are legitimate are obviously teams that think they have Super Bowl aspirations. So with that, you have a situation where most of those teams' draft choices aren't going to be all that good. So, we'll see who has the most to give up, who can, has a player on the roster maybe, as the person in the text message says, 2 1s and a 2. Yeah, I'm not saying that wouldn't get it done. I think 2 1s and a 2 would get it done. But would somebody else also offer 2 1s and a 2, and their ones are better than your ones?
Right. Or is there a scenario where somebody has a player that the Browns would really want? Right? You mentioned about the player scenario.
And that's the thing. Does somebody else have a player? Now, the Eagles, to me, like we said, Nolan Smith. Does anybody out there listening, I'll give up Nolan Smith 2 2s and a 1 or 2 1s and a 2 and Nolan Smith. I think that's a lot. That's a lot. But is Myles Garrett a better guarantee to be a better player over the next 2 years than Nolan Smith?
I think
you have a 2 to 3 year window where you are viewing right now as, look, we got another 2 to 3 really legitimate shots with this core group. Nolan Smith, good. Myles Garrett, elite.
What about the concern, does trading Nolan Smith disrupt the locker room at all?
He is one of those Georgia guys, but, by all accounts, Myles Garrett's a pretty good dude.
Oh, I wasn't worried about Garrett. I mean about Smith. The fact that these guys, there was a lot of one for all for one kind of vibe to the team last year. Is there any concern that if you get rid of one of the one for all for one, that kind of might,
maybe, but you got to understand, you're a professional. You got to understand that there's roster turnover. You can't stay complacent. So I think if you're professional enough, although, listen, we always say you're a professional. Just because you're professional doesn't mean you're not human. That does come into play. The text message from Jeff says, sign Becton. To your point, Mike, keep the depth on that line. Yeah, I think Becton, I think he's important. I do think Tyler Steen can play right guard and that you would not have a massive drop-off. So if Becton wants too much money, you got to be smart and say we do have a legitimate replacement. Now, the other thing that he writes is sign Zach Bond. Bond is the guy that I do not think you have a legitimate replacement for. And we're going to talk to Andrew DiCecco today for Football at 4 about that. Which guys on the roster that if they walk, you have in-house replacements for? 609-403-0973. Mike, I wouldn't be interested in getting Garrett unless it was with picks, but I'm not giving up any young guys for a 30-year-old Garrett. I like the young core we have. So that's pretty definitive. Guy's 30 years old, although he has 14 sacks back-to-back seasons. He's still pretty disruptive.
He is arguably, if not the best, one of the 3 best pass rushers on the planet right now.
He finished second in snaps this year. I'm trying to think, is there anybody, because he is 30. Listen, I get it. He's an older guy. I don't say older. He's right there. He's right at that age where is he going to keep going at the 12 to 14 sack range, or is this the year where you get him and he takes that dip? And if he goes from 14 to 8, well, I got that in Nolan Smith.
Right.
609-403-0973. Could you throw in Eli Ricks and Tanner McKee, perhaps? Well, Eli Ricks has no value.
Eli Ricks has as much value as throwing me into a trade.
Yeah, I mean, I love how people are just like, just throw more people into trades, and that'll make it attractive. It's like my fantasy football friends. I'll give, or my fantasy baseball friends more so, because in my fantasy football league, we have to trade position for position, so it has to be an equal number. But it's like, in fantasy baseball, the guy picks up 4 guys off the waiver wire, and then he offers you those 4 players and asks for your first-round pick. He's like, well, I'm giving you 4 guys. I'm like, yeah, 4 guys I could have picked up off the waiver wire.
And there's a reason why I didn't want them.
Yeah, Eli Ricks has no value, 0. Tanner McKee, I think we here value Tanner McKee because he's played for the Eagles. He had a good game. He's our guy. You're not getting Myles Garrett for Tanner McKee.
No.
Come on, let's be honest here. Tanner McKee is a nice, deep backup, but you think someone's going to trade for him and say, hey, he's our starting quarterback? Like, we've gone through this before with the A.J. Phillies and the Kevin Cobbs, and, teams are saying, I'm not getting suckered into giving you a player for a player like that. Now, I'm not saying that Tanner McKee wouldn't be a guy that you throw in there as a throw-in and just say, hey, we'll give you a first, Tanner McKee, and 2 seconds, but Tanner McKee's not the thing that, like, Eli Ricks, certainly not. I did mention McKee the other day, so he's not far-fetched. That's not getting it done. But if you're saying throw in Eli Ricks to say that's going to be the period at the end of the sentence, no.
Yeah, and I would also say about Tanner McKee is only going to have value to a team that looks at this year's draft class and looks at free agency and says, I can't get anything better right now. So the question is, do the Browns fit into the category of a team like that? And I think if you say yes, then sure he has value. If you say no, then he's out.
Kevin in Canada, big game tonight, Kev.
Canada.
Says, guys love the trade, but I think this is the time you don't trade for Garrett. Eagles should target Jack Sawyer in the draft. Last year they drafted Keegan for backup left guard and Dylan McMahon backup center. Yeah, Keegan is around for left guard, but as we said, you need a backup center. I don't know that McMahon, they view all that much. Keep in mind, I think he was hurt this year, McMahon.
And when he was healthy, they didn't bring him back.
Jack Sawyer. Listen, I'm not into draft mode quite yet. I do know who he is, Ohio State, athletic guy. You're picking 32. They do like edge rushers, so that's a guy that would possibly, if he was in the mix.
I mean, Sawyer, though, is a stud. Like, are you really going to draft a guy who could be potentially a starting NFL center to just be the backup for Cam Jurgens? That feels kind of like a weird move to make. You know what I mean?
Who are you talking about?
Sawyer.
Sawyer he plays defensive end.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm thinking about the Ohio State center. You were talking about center there for a minute.
Well, he mentioned Dylan McMahon, who they drafted last year. Jack Sawyer is the defensive end for Ohio State.
Yeah.
Ohio
State's got a center as well who's really good.
Yeah, no, Sawyer is. I don't know that he would be a guy that would be there at 32. I mean,
probably not.
I'd have to, we'll tap into Andrew a little bit more for that. But yeah, Sawyer is an edge rusher. But for McMahon, yeah, I think he was hurt. I think he didn't. Obviously, I'm pretty sure he was hurt. That's why he, But Keegan they do like as a left guard for that one, for that guy there. If the Eagles got Myles Garrett, you can't double Jalen Carter and Myles Garrett. That is true. Listen, I'm not downplaying Myles Garrett. I think you get Myles Garrett. And listen, I don't discount Myles Garrett being an option. What have I said this offseason? I think this offseason could be about Howie Roseman kind of going all Dodgers and saying, you think we were good last year? Watch what we do this year. All right, 225, Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN. The 97.3 ESPN free mobile app, live video streaming on the X platform, YouTube, at Mike Gill Show. Subscribe. Sixers back tonight against the Celtics. You can listen to the game on 97.3 ESPN. When we come back, Todd Zolecki, MLB.com, Phillies.com. A lot of text messages coming in. Keep them coming, 609-403-0973. Is Trea Turner going to be the Phillies leadoff man? That's next with Todd Zolecki from Phillies.com and MLB.com on the Sports Bash.
get back to a little bit more speed and have that aspect to be.
That was Trea Turner telling the media that he might be looking forward to hitting in a new spot in the lineup. It could be number 1 in the lineup. Todd Zolecki covers the Phillies, MLB.com, the Phillies podcast. You can check that out as well with Todd Zolecki, Jim Salisbury, Ruben Amaro Jr. He joins me right now with a look at the Phillies at spring training in Clearwater, which is probably a lot nicer than it is here right now. Todd Zolecki, what's up, buddy? Welcome back, man.
Mike, what's going on, dude? How are you?
I'm doing good. So my cousin said he met you a little while back, and he said, Todd Zolecki said he used to do your show all the time. I said, you know what? He did used to do my show all the time. It's time to bring him back.
I love it, man. Good to talk to you, man. I haven't talked to you forever.
I know. I'll be down in Clearwater here soon. I hope to bump into you. I know you guys put out your list of your. Is everything okay down there? Like everything opening back up?
Yeah, I tell you what. When you drive to Clearwater Beach, I mean, I certainly like in some residential neighborhoods, like near the beach, things are still pretty banged up. But for the average Phillies fan coming to Clearwater this spring, you're really not going to see a huge difference in how the area looks. The marina right now is under construction on Clearwater Beach, but that was already scheduled. But pretty much everything else is open. There's like maybe 1 or 2 businesses that are still boarded up, but all the big restaurants down here, all the Frenchies locations are open. The Palm Pavilion reopened. Clear Sky, all those places, they're back and running, and it does look great down here.
Good to hear that. We'll be down in Clearwater here shortly. Todd Zolecki's with the Phillies. So let's start with Trea Turner. Leadoff, it sounds like he's cool with that. I guess the question would be, he's cool with it, but is everybody else?
I think so. Yeah, you know what? I here's the sense I get from this team. They think they're really good. They think they can win the World Series. They also know that their time is limited. Schwarber is a free agent after the season. JT Realmuto is a free agent after the season. Ranger Suarez is a free agent after the season. And so I think they understand that they're not going to have this group together forever because you can't keep everybody all the time. And so I think these guys are willing to make adjustments. Bryce Harper loves to hit third. That's where he wants to hit. But he said, if I have to hit second, I'll hit second. I've hit second in the past. Kyle Schwarber, I think he loves hitting leadoff. And I think if you could pick your spot in the lineup and you could guarantee where you win a World Series, where would you? I think he would say first. But I also think he wants to win a World Series, so if he has to hit fourth, he will hit fourth. And I think Trea Turner, they think that if he hits first, it might make him a little bit more selective at the plate. It might change his approach. Instead of trying to drive in runs, maybe his mindset might be more, I just got to get on base. Just see pitches, just get on base, steal a bag or two, score some runs. And so I think all of those guys on board, because those are the 3 guys you have to consider, right? Bryce, Kyle, and Trea Turner. And all 3 of those guys seem to be very open to hitting in those spots.
That's the key, because you're right. I mean, Turner's hit leadoff plenty in the past. In fact, I think he's hit leadoff more than any other spot in the order during his career, as has Schwarber. But the big one is Harper. I've got people, messaging me. Well, Harper will not agree to do it, but you're saying that doesn't seem to be the case. He's willing to hit 2, but probably not like, hey, do you want to hit leadoff? He's not wanting to do that, but he's willing to hit 2.
Yes, he did say, I've hit 2, I've hit 3, I've hit 4. He said, the reason why I like hitting third is because I like to see a lot of pitches before my bats. I like to see what the pitcher's doing. So obviously you move up 1 spot in the order. You don't see as many pitches in that first at bat, but you also get about 18, 20 more plate appearances over the course of a 162-game season. So you also get to hit more if you hit second, of course, obviously, right? The one thing he says he doesn't want to do is, I don't want to hit leadoff. I don't consider myself a leadoff hitter. But Rob Thompson also said that before we talked to Bryce the other day, or last week in camp. Rob said, we are not going to hit Bryce leadoff. He is not going to be a leadoff hitter. And that's because I think they just think the best option is Trea Turner.
All right, Todd Zolecki is with us down in Clearwater. MLB.com covers the Phillies podcast. Make sure you guys are checking that out throughout the spring for all the updates there. So I guess that means Bohm would hit in the 3 spot and Nick Castellanos in the 5 spot. After that, then what are we looking at here? Is that just still up in the air? Is that something they're going to figure out down in Clearwater?
I think best guess right now, if Bohm does hit third, And Rob has said he likes the idea of splitting up Bryce and Schwarber with the righty bat. So that's why I think it's going to be Bowman in the 3 spot. I think you're right. I think Castellanos hits 5th. Then after that, you kind of have to Rob really does like to alternate the lefty-righty situation. So I think Bryson Stott right now is the favorite to hit 6th. He hit 5th or 6th most of last season, even though he struggled. He's healthy now, so everybody seems to think he's going to have a big bounce back here. He had an elbow injury last year that really kind of changed his swing, got him into some bad habits, they said. So he would hit 6th. I think JT Realmuto would hit 7th. And then you have 2 lefties at the end of the lineup in Max Kepler and Brandon Marsh. So probably Max Kepler 8th. He's got a little bit more pop. And then Brandon Marsh 9th. You could have Johan Rojas hitting 9th sometimes. So maybe you would have, so you have Rojas hit 9th, Kepler hit 8th. But I think that's how the lineup right now on paper is probably most likely going to set up.
Todd, are you surprised that Kepler, not only was he the guy they brought in, but that they basically said he's going to be the everyday player out there? I mean, is that a little bit of a surprise that that's what they're going to go into this season with?
Well, it was definitely a surprise for me because I guess assumed that when they tried to upgrade in left field that it would be a right-handed hitting corner outfielder. Because they got Austin Hayes last year at the trade deadline, and the whole idea there was we're so left-handed, we need somebody that can crush some left-handed pitching in the postseason. And so they went out and they got Austin Hayes, and obviously that did not work out, and then they let him go. They non-tendered him. They made him a free agent after the season ended. But because of all those things, I went in the offseason going, okay, who's it going to be? Teoscar Hernandez maybe, Anthony Santander from the Orioles, could it be maybe a more mid-level type of right-handed bat? No, they went out and they got Max Kepler. It's funny because the night that news broke, it was Mark Feinsand at MLB.com. We broke that story, and then we caught word that the Phillies had reached an agreement on a 1-year contract with an outfielder. So I immediately went to all the right-handed hitting corner outfielders. I said, all right, well, it's not Hernandez, it's not Santander, it's not, it can't be this guy because he's also looking for a multi-year deal. I'm going, I said, who could it possibly be?
Who's left?
Figured out. Yeah, who's left that could? Who's a competent right-handed bat that would sign a 1-year deal? And I'm like, it might be a left-hander. So then we figured it out. We figured it out with Max Kepler, but it was very surprising to me. And is it surprising that he's penciled in to be the everyday left fielder? Not totally. I think they want to give him that opportunity to prove himself. I think they need him to try to prove himself. They want him to prove himself. When he is healthy and he's good, he's been very good. The problem is that he has been injured a lot, and when he's injured, he hasn't been very good. But I think they really want to see if he can hit left-handed pitching. If he can't hit left-handed pitching, then you're looking at a situation where you might see a little bit more Weston Wilson in left field this season.
All right. If you were to say, hey, they lost to the Mets, was their starting pitching the reason? And I ask that because the big move they made was to add a starter. Now, I understand they needed a starter, but when you look at the starting rotation, was that what needed to be upgraded the most?
Probably not to that degree, in the sense that you could have probably found a cheaper, and I say cheaper, I mean, they traded a top 100 prospect in Starling Cava to the Marlins to get Jesus Luzardo. Maybe you could have found maybe a cheaper option to be the number 5 starter to kind of hold the fort down until Andrew Painter comes up, possibly June, July, or August. But I think the Phillies with their payroll restrictions, I mean, they have the 3rd highest payroll in baseball, but they're over that 4th luxury tax. So they're paying 110% tax penalty for every dollar they spend at this point. I think they couldn't get maybe the relievers they wanted on a 1-year deal. They got Jordan Romano, hoping he's going to bounce back. We talked about Kepler. Obviously, he's trying to bounce back on a 1-year deal. And so I think in their mind, and I actually agree with this. I've heard Pat Gillick say this, Hall of Fame GM with the Phillies, and Ruben Amaro and Ed Wade, all sorts of people over the years. Just try to get better. And so if you can't maybe get the left-handed outfielder that you wanted, or maybe you can't get the another elite closer or late inning reliever that you wanted, man, why don't you just stockpile up on starting pitching? Just go hard on starting pitching, because if you get good starting pitching, you have a chance to win most nights, even if your offense is struggling. So I think that's the thought process there. And also, I think, quite frankly, Dave Dombrowski said this last week. He says, I take the blame for this. I think one of the big reasons why we struggled in the second half is because I did not address the rotation at the trade deadline. You know, Taijuan Walker. Remember last second half, Taijuan Walker was pitching. Ranger was not good in the second half last year. He was injured. He was banged up. You had Tyler Phillips in there struggling. You had Seth Johnson, a prospect, make a spot start. So they really struggled in the second half, in part because their number 4 and 5 starters were struggling. So I think in Dave Dombrowski's mind is, okay, we didn't get Teoscar Hernandez or make a big move or make a big splash offensively like the Mets or like the Dodgers. But, man, we've loaded up on starting pitching, and that should give us a pretty good chance.
All right, in your mind, the bullpen failed them in the playoffs, but is their bullpen better now than over 162 last year?
Boy, that is great. I don't know if I could say that right now because Jeff Hoffman was so good last season. I know an all-star reliever. Carlos Estevez was pretty good for them down the stretch. You know, obviously, you're right. They did not pitch well in the postseason. That was a big reason why they got knocked out by the Mets. A lot is hinging on two people in my mind. Jordan Romano, all-star closer 2 years in a row with the Blue Jays, was hurt last year. By all accounts, he's throwing the ball well this spring. I think they're optimistic about him. I think, to me, the big piece of this puzzle is Orion Kerkering. They really, truly believe he's ready to take a step up and fill the Jeff Hoffman role and be a dirty inning, coming in with a runner on first and second and one out and get out of the jam type of guy. If Orion Kerkering is ready to take that next step and be that dirty inning, late inning reliever, then I think that they could be good. But I mean, you're definitely have to keep an eye on Romano and Kerkering. I think both of those guys are going to need to step up to kind of match or exceed the performance of last year's bullpen.
All right, we're talking with Todd Zolecki, and you can check out all his work over at MLB.com, Phillies.com. Check out the Phillies podcast. It's a great show with him, Jim Salisbury, Ruben Amaro Jr. And one of the things, I guess, you know, we're getting a chance to see some of these young guys, Painter, Miller, Crawford, I know we all think Painter will have some impact, but do either of the position guys have a shot at all to impact this team in 2025?
I think there's a chance. Now, it's funny because Dave Dombrowski has said in his first press conference following the loss to the Mets last fall, Justin Crawford was brought up, and he said, now here's a guy that could come fast. He could, unlikely, but he could potentially push for a promotion at some point this season. I think that's possible. It's probably unlikely, but it's possible. I mean, if he just has a great year, and there's a need for sure, I think he could be considered. Aiden Miller we asked Dave the same thing, and he brought it up on others, and he's like, Aiden Miller is really, really good baseball player. We think he's going to be a really, really good shortstop, and he says a guy like that can come fast to the big leagues. I've seen it before. The great ones come fast, and he thinks he's going to be a star one day. He thinks Aiden Miller's going to be a star. So I actually asked Dave, I said, do you think he could push for a spot later this season? He said, I would not I don't want to put that on him. I think it's unlikely. I don't think so, but I can't entirely rule it out either. I mean, if the guy has a gangbusters year and there's an injury or there's a trade to be made or something like that, possibly, but I would say unlikely for both of them. But Painter for sure is a guy that Dave has openly said July-ish. He's like, that could be June, that could be August, 6-man rotation possibly, but he absolutely 100% expects Andrew Painter to pitch for them at some point in 2025,
and if that's
and be good. He's not coming up as a, hopefully he can give us 4 good innings, and be somewhat competitive. They expect him to come up and pitch well.
Yeah, and say if that's the case, then that means somebody's bumped, right? Or either bumped or traded.
Well, I don't.
Or hurt.
Hurt. Certainly, injury could impact that. I don't necessarily think though that means that somebody gets traded or somebody gets bumped. They have talked about using a 6-man rotation because for a few reasons. Ranger Suarez, he was injured last year. They want to keep him healthy. They want to monitor his workload. They think he wore down in the second half of the season. Jesus Luzardo missed most of last season with an injury. So they have to be really mindful of how much he pitches. And, of course, Andrew Painter has to be somebody who, he hasn't pitched in 2 competitive years, so they really need to monitor his workload. So it's not like Andrew Painter's going to come up and he's going to be throwing 110 pitches, going 6, 7, 8 innings every time out. He might only go, 4, 5, 6 innings. And regardless, they might want to give him that extra rest. So I do think there's a scenario where to keep these guys fresh and effective for the postseason, they do go to a 6-man rotation.
All right, Todd Zolecki. Of course, the Phillies open up on Saturday. Now, getting ready for the start of spring training, long grinding stuff here with not a lot of stories, right? They don't have a lot of roster decisions to make here. It looks like they got a 5-man rotation. They got a pretty set roster. They have a pretty set group of guys. Is there any roster story or something that fans should be paying attention to?
Well, I think Rafael Marchand, Garrett Stubbs, who's going to be the backup catcher. I think right now you go into camp, Rafael Marchand has the edge because he is out of options. So if he doesn't make the team, you probably lose him to another organization. And Phillies don't have a lot of great catching depth. So I think right now the edge goes to Marchand over Stubbs, who's been the backup the last 3 years. This is intriguing only because of the contract involved, but Taijuan Walker, is he going to be the last man in the bullpen?
Yes.
He's got 2 years, $36 million left, or I think it's $38 million left on his deal. Is he going to make the team? So that's something to watch. Again, more or less because he's, the Phillies, when they signed him, they thought he'd be in the rotation, and now he's like fighting to be the long man in the bullpen. And then that last spot is the last bench job. Is it going to be Weston Wilson? Is it going to be Cody Clemens? If they try Edmundo Sosa in center field as a right-handed bat, does maybe Johan Rojas start the season in the minor leagues, and does that maybe allow them to keep Weston Wilson and Cody Clemens on the bench? So there's some like final bullpen spot, final bench spot, intrigue. But yeah, definitely nothing sexy. That's for sure.
Absolutely, which means more time. I like the new Bavaros down there. I was a big fan of that spot last year. Hopefully, it didn't get hit in the hurricane down there. I know the Boxer reopened too, right?
The Boxer reopened. The Bavaros is open. I know that because I know some friends that have already been down there and been crushing some za.
I saw last year. I saw Ruben at the Salt House, which took over for the Boxer. That's a nice little new spot down there. I know a lot of people.
I have not been there. Okay.
Yeah, it was at where the Brown Boxer used to be. It's called the Salt House. Really good spot. They really it's more of like I don't want to say fancier, but it's
right.
a nicer establishment in terms of like it's got like the white look to it, very like beachy. So yeah, it's a good spot to check out. Looking forward to getting back down there here soon. And Todd Zolecki, MLB.com, the Philly Show podcast. Make sure you guys check that out. And he was kind enough to come back here on the Sports Bash 97.3 ESPN. Thank you, Todd. We'll have you on again soon, bud.
Absolutely. See you, Mike.
All right, Todd Zolecki, MLB.com, covers the Phillies long time. The Philly Show is the podcast. A lot of people checking that out with Jim Salisbury and Ruben Amaro Jr. We'll have him on throughout the baseball season this year to cover the Philadelphia Phillies. We're going heavy on the Phils this season. It's a chance for them to do something that the Eagles did. Can they win a World Series? You just heard some of the key stories from Todd Zolecki. Next hour, Johnny Mack talks Eagles. Keith Smith on the NBA second half starting tonight. We got that for you right here on the Sports Bash live on 97.3 ESPN. Hey, Sports Bash live tomorrow. We are going to be on location at the brand new 279 Social Kitchen and Craft Bar. It is going to be a blast. It's the grand opening, new spot in Galloway. It's their grand opening, and the Sports Bash will be celebrating with them for Happy Hour Friday. We invite everybody to come on out, and everybody who stops out to see the show, you have a chance to win tickets to see The Weeknd this summer at Lincoln Financial Field. So check out the new spot, 279 Social Kitchen and Craft Bar. We'll be there live tomorrow, 2 to 6 for the Sports Bash, and a chance for you to win tickets to see The Weeknd this summer at Lincoln Financial Field. But I am looking forward to the awesome menu. I've heard awesome things about this new location. It's the former site of Romanelli's in Galloway. Stop out tomorrow. We'll see you live. 3 o'clock, Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN, the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app, live video streaming on the X platform, YouTube, at Mike Gill Show. Subscribe, watch the show live. Download the free mobile app and listen on your phone. It's free, thanks to First Bank of Sea Isle City. John McMullen, host of Birds 365, Sports Illustrated, covers the Eagles, and, of course, the Eagles offseason is here. We've talked a lot about it. We got a couple things we want to dive into because I definitely want to hear John's take on Cam Jurgens. He's going to get, or he had surgery. I guess, John, that gives us a little indication why he wasn't able to play or didn't start the NFC Championship game. It sounds like kind of a pain tolerance thing, but this surgery kind of to alleviate some of the pain that he had in that back, and all signs, in your mind, point to him being ready to go for training camp in July?
Yeah, well, that's what they're saying. That's what Dr. Watkins is saying. He should be ready by July. Now, obviously, they're not going to push it if there's some issues. You're really worried about week 1 in September more than training camp. But, obviously he was fighting through something pretty significant, and the fact that he played, I think it ended up being 67 of 74 snaps in the Super Bowl, and he only came out because it was a blowout. So tells you what kind of toughness is. A lot of guys, I always say that time of year, just because they're healthy and they're out there doesn't mean they're healthy. And Cam is and Landon Dickerson's in that category as well, because he indicated he's probably going to have surgery in the off season as well. So, it takes a lot to play as many games as the Eagles did, and Cam was one of those guys fighting through some significant pain.
Yeah, so, I look at this and anything back-related, that worries you, right? That's a lingerer. That's something that, hey, you get it's fixed, you're back out there, it flares back up, which then directly goes to when he did not start the game, they had to move Landon Dickerson over to center. So does that now become a spot that they have to focus a little bit more on in the offseason? Is a backup center, or would they be okay with Landon Dickerson as the backup center again?
Yeah, I mean, worst comes to shove, Landon's a great center. He was a center at Alabama, All-American center. So they have no issues with playing Landon Dickerson at center. The question is, the downgrade. So it kind of feels, and that's what Jeff Stoutland, just talking to Daniel Jeremiah today on his conference call, and, that's one of the things he said about Stoutland, his ability to cross-train people. You think about Cam played right guard last year before he moved back over to center. Landon can play anywhere on the interior, so that's one of the strengths of Jeff Stoutland. So it's not like you need. Typically, people think, "Oh, you got to have a backup center." And in the Eagles world, it's what are the best 3 guys? And last year, the best way to go about it was to move Landon and put Tyler Steen in there. So,
well, they might not have that option if Becton walks, right?
Yeah, and so that's what I'm kind of saying. It depends what you have, where you are, but they have guys. Last year they had Nick Gates as well. Nick's been released, and Brett Toth can play center snaps. So, it just they have guys. It's just a matter of who Jeff Stoutland thinks is the best at that particular time.
Yeah, and that's an interesting thing, because if Becton ends up walking, you imagine Steen just kind of plugs into that spot. And then, of course, because Steen played left guard in the NFC Championship game with Dickerson moving over. So it's one of those things where one guy moves over here, it's a kind of a twofold. So who are some of the young offensive linemen that may be pressed into more duty next year?
Well, I think, that nobody is the plan, because obviously –
well, and that's another thing, John. This team was pretty healthy up front. I think Mailata missed like 4 weeks. You had Lane miss 1 game here. You didn't have a long absence of anybody up front, and that generally has been what has crippled Eagles seasons in the past.
Well, yeah, but I think there's this assumption that you can have a never-ending flow of great offensive linemen. That's just not the case. I mean, you can't replace, if you think about Lane Johnson, Jordan Mailata, Landon Dickerson, Cam Jurgens, Mekhi Becton, that's your starting group. And prior, when you had Jason Kelsey and Cam was playing guard, basically everybody was either an All-Pro, a Pro Bowl selection, or at least a Pro Bowl alternate. And that is not a common occurrence in the NFL.
No.
So their top backups, were Tyler Steen, as you mentioned, his ability to play both guards. So he was a tackle in college. He can play tackle as well. We talked about that cross training. Fred Johnson had to fill in for Jordan Mailata and Lane Johnson at times. Did a nice job as a swing tackle. So, they have more depth than anyone. But it's not like you say, oh, you need a backup center. If you lose your starting center for a long period of time, you're probably in deep you-know-what. It's just that the Eagles happen to have Landon Dickerson, and they can move some parts, and they're better equipped to handle it than most. Most teams are in really, really difficult circumstances. So, the Eagles will bring in people, and as I said, Jeff likes Brett Toth a lot. He's always got a legitimate backup center either on the practice squad. Last year it was Nick Gates. And he'll bring somebody in.
Right.
But, it's not a matter of, you can't just replace players that are the Eagles starters. I mean, they're one of the best offensive lines ever because all the starters are really good.
Yeah, and I mean, I think the one, I don't want to say misconception, but one of the thoughts from fans is whatever guy they draft and they work him in, when he gets called on, he gets out there and he's, if Trevor Keegan has to play left guard because Landon Dickerson got moved over to center for a couple of weeks, I think most people don't blink at that, right?
Yeah, well, they should. He should.
Although I will say, Tyler Steen, agree or disagree, Tyler Steen played, and you barely knew he was out there half the night. I thought he had a rough night in the Super Bowl. But other than that,
I think it's pretty significant downturn when he was in there. I think it was pretty significant when Fred was in there. I think it's one of those things where they persevered. But if you look at the individual play, it's pretty dramatic from, say, Jordan Mailata to Fred Johnson or Mekhi Becton down to Tyler Steen. It was pretty dramatic. But, their backups are better than most people's backups. But, yeah, I think that assumption that you can put Trevor Keegan in there is not miss a beat is not the case. Fred, not the case. And you do have to make some adjustments. And in the past, I mean, Andre Dillard is somebody who they drafted highly, did not work out. So it's not like, Jeff Stoutland has this ability to create anybody into anything. These are really, really, really good players, the Eagles' starting offensive line.
Very much so. So obviously Becton's the one guy there. We see that Cam Jurgens back surgery. They hope to have him back for training camp. We're talking with John McMullen from Birds 365. Let me get your thoughts. How do you see the Slay thing kind of playing out here?
Yeah, difficult decisions for the Eagles. I mean, he's 35 years old, and there aren't many 35-year-old corners playing at the level of Darius Slay. So there are zero. You could argue Stephon Gilmore's somewhere in that range, but he's already in that, former defensive player of the year, and even he's already in that method of going from one team to another for $6-7 million, and he's pretty amazing himself. But Father Time's going to catch up eventually and pretty quickly here. So it's going to be tough to bring Darius Slay back at a number that he's comfortable with, especially coming off the season he had. And vice versa, and he's already talking about Detroit and going back there. He wants to play again, but I don't think he's going to get the contract he's used to at this stage of his career. I mean, people just do not believe that 35-year-old corners are going to hold up for an entire season at a high level. And, there's good reason for that. It generally doesn't happen.
All right, so let's say they can't come to an agreement. Is that something where they feel, we've been hearing about all these young guys for years, the Eli Ricks and the Job and all these guys who have been at every training camp, and they're the battles to watch. Do they feel comfortable that they have an in-house option, or does that become something that they need to address as well?
No, I think they feel comfortable that they have enough bodies to at least, and certainly Vic Fangio has shown that he can at least get some people up to speed. I don't know if you're going to play at the same level as Slay, but at some point, the old adage in sports, better to give up on somebody a year early than a year late is sort of the mentality, and how he's been through this before where loyalty has kind of hurt him at times, keeping older players a little bit longer than he should. And you have Kaylee Ringo and you have Eli Ricks, as you mentioned. I think if they don't bring Slay back, they probably make a pretty good run at getting Isaiah Rodgers back. So you got a bunch of bodies. Is it going to be the same? Probably not. But at some point you have to shift directions, and maybe 2 years down the road, maybe Ringo's the one with significant upside, and you can always play Cooper DeJean outside as well. But that means you have to find a slot corner. It's
and as we know, nobody in that group that we mentioned they like enough to play slot.
No, well, Ringo and Ricks are too big to play in the slot, and even though Ricks did it a little bit as a rookie, he didn't do it very well. And then Rodgers, everybody looks at Rodgers and says, well, he should be a slot quarterback because of his lack of size, but he's never really played that position because he doesn't feel comfortable there. So, it kind of depends how the young corners develop. But at one point, the problem with Cooper DeJean is he's so gifted. At some point, business comes into it, and outside corners make a heck of a lot more than slot corners. And at some point, his agent's going to make him aware of that.
Yeah.
And they're going to want to play outside. I don't know if it happens this quickly, but it's going to happen. And then you have to figure out something inside.
Well, these are the things that happen when you win, and everybody wants to be acknowledged when they win. And the Eagles are in a good spot though because they've won at a young age. That's rare, right? You get a team that wins when they're young and kind of lock. They don't have a lot of guys who are in that mode where they need to ask for more money while they're already under contract.
No, well, they have the big four that are pending free agents.
Well, they're free agents. I'm talking about guys who are locked in but feel they're underpaid and want to renegotiate.
No, and one of the issues that the two guys up for extensions now will be Cam Jurgens and Nakobe Dean, and they're both dealing with injuries, so that complicates things for the Eagles as well, because you want to make sure they're okay before you commit large sums of money, and those are difficult decisions. Maybe you have to wait, and typically the Eagles, the secret to their success almost is not waiting, because they understand what that means, and ultimately they're going to find out with Milton Williams, certain guys, if you do wait, you're only going to pay more than if you strike early, as the Eagles did with Jalen Hurts and A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, et cetera.
Yeah, and you mentioned Milton Williams. They've got, I think the one guy that everybody is familiar with is Moro Ojomo, but is there another group of younger players that they think could possibly enter some sort of rotation there? Or would one of them kind of stand out and get a bounce in, like an uptick in snaps?
No, Morrow would be that guy. I mean, Thomas Booker's here, but he's more of he hasn't played that much. Morrow played pretty significant snaps this year. He actually played more snaps than Jordan Davis. Now they play different positions, but he played quite a bit. But the good news there is the draft is very deep with defensive front people this draft. So probably the deepest part of this draft is the defensive front. So you can guarantee the Eagles are probably going to bring in multiple bodies when it comes to the draft on the defensive front.
Yeah, I know the draft, because that's the one thing. At 32, you hinted the other day, likely you don't pick at 32. You probably move out of there. But they, apparently this defensive tackle class, very deep. So that would be, all right, we don't want to lose this guy. We've got some talent behind him, and there's a lot of talent at defensive tackle that we can kind of look to restock there, and that's a position they're willing to take. So that factors in too. They're willing to take a tackle, they're willing to take an offensive lineman, they're willing to take an edge rusher. So that might factor into some of the free agent decisions they have.
Oh yeah, no doubt about it. I mean, they know because they have so many star players and what they're already paying some of them, and plus they know what's coming down the road with certain guys. As I said, Cam's up for an extension, Kobe's up for an extension, and then shortly thereafter, Jalen Carter is going to break the bank, to say the least. So Howie, it's not about 1 year for Howie; it's always about 3-year increments. So he understands as he's building a roster. So he understands what guys he has to pay, what that's going to look like. And then to do that, you have to rotate it and start the clock over, so to speak, at certain positions. And this is the year that they're probably going to start the clock over on multiple bodies up front. If you lose Milton Williams and Josh Sweat, the good news is you can draft their replacements or potential replacements and have them under cost-effective deals for 4 years. So that's sort of the whole trick to it.
Well, you and I both always have been supporters of Howie Roseman. However, I will say you can't hit on every pick. It's just impossible to keep this streak going. There's going to be a bust somewhere in here, right? I mean, so you got to factor in that every move he makes cannot be – I mean, Bryce Huff obviously is one that blew up in your face, so far anyway.
Yeah, and people forget. I mean, people were calling Nolan Smith a bust. So, I mean, there has to be some patience. And Howie mentioned that with Bryce Huff, and they're going to give it another shot with Bryce Huff. And, if he's healthy, I'm going to guarantee he's going to be better than he was this year at the bare minimum. So who knows? He might be, there are a lot of people on my show calling Nolan Smith a bust. They've receded into the background, but they were there.
Yeah.
And, they're saying the same thing about Bryce Huff can't do this. Bryce, maybe he can. I mean, Howie mentioned before he went to New Orleans, he's seen him do it at the NFL level. He said he's even a little bit more confident than with a rookie player, because a rookie player is an evaluation. You haven't seen them against NFL players. With Bryce, he rushed the passer very effectively as a rotational player with the Jets. So I wouldn't close the book on Bryce Huff just yet. And, some people have called Jordan Davis a bust. For his role, he does a very good job. He's just not, what some people thought he would be. And again, with Nolan, it was, when is this guy going to get on the field? And ultimately got on the field due to injury, and he knocked it out of the park. So there's got to be some patience as well.
Well, it's funny because I think you might have brought up Nolan Smith. Would he be a guy you would have to include if you were to be in a trade for like a Myles Garrett? And now you have Eagle fans saying, well, you can't trade Nolan Smith. I'm like, you're getting Myles Garrett.
It's hilarious. We were talking about that again this morning, and I said, the human mind is interesting. It really is, because, with all due respect to Nolan Smith, I mean, yeah, he ain't Myles Garrett, but, that's how quickly people will fall in love with a young player after they had fallen out of love with the same young player.
Yep.
earlier in the same season.
Well, and it's it's an interesting conversation. Like theoretically, it's like, hey, you get Myles Garrett because you have this little core together about 2 to 3 years, you would think, and you're hoping that Myles Garrett still has 2 to 3 elite years, and you're not sure if Nolan Smith has better than what he gave you. You're just hopeful. So you have to balance it for the organization. We have a 2 to 3 year shot, and we're going to upgrade at a position. You probably have to at least consider that.
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't know how the Eagles outbid other teams, number one, because, again, they're picking so low, 32nd this year. And even if you're talking about another number one next year, it's probably going to be 27 to 32. They're going to be good. It's just a matter of how good. So they don't have the same, and the same thing with second-round picks at the bottom in the second round. They don't have the same draft capital to give up for a player like that others will have, number one. And that's where you get into, well, then you might have to give up a player or two. And you're not getting a player who, if he never plays another down, Myles Garrett's already a Hall of Fame player.
Yeah.
That's how good he is.
All right, so let's play the game. You like to say #no. Joey Bosa is cut. Is he a guy you're interested in?
If he's cut, sure. The Eagles.
Reports are that he's going to get released by the Chargers.
The Eagles are probably, going to add multiple bodies. My assumption is they're going to lose Josh in free agency. And that means Brandon's going to retire. And that means they're going to have to add multiple bodies. You can get one in the draft maybe and one on free agency. And Joey Bosa, especially in a more limited role where everything is not dependent on him, I think he's got plenty left in the tank. Then you would say, now, he didn't have a great I know he didn't like Philadelphia when he was watching his brother play at the NFC Championship game. So would he want to come here? I don't know. Some people want to win. Some people want the most money. If he wants the most money, he's already made a boatload. But if he wants to win and he wants to go ring shopping, yeah, I would make that call. He could help you.
All right, there you go. We'll keep an eye on that. We'll see what other big names end up getting released, and then everybody's going to want to jump in on them, and we'll see if John thinks any of those would be worthy of coming here to
usually
Philly.
#no.
#no at JF McMullen to check that out. And, of course, weekday mornings, 8 a.m. on the Jacob Media YouTube channel. It is Birds 365. All right, John, we'll catch up with you tomorrow, pal.
All right, thanks, Mike.
All right, there's John, of course, here on the Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN, the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app, live video streaming on the X platform, YouTube, at Mike Gill Show. This hour of the show brought to you by Broadley's Plumbing, Heating, Air Conditioning, your trusted source for heating, plumbing, service, installation for generations. Call them at 609-390-3907. or visit broadleys.net. Sports Bash Live tomorrow at 279 Social Kitchen and Craft Bar. It's at 279 New York Avenue in Galloway. We'll be out there with a pair of tickets to see The Weeknd at Lincoln Financial Field this summer. And you can be out there, be a part of the show, stop out and say hello, enter to win. Right here on the Sports Bash Live, 279 Social Kitchen and Craft Bar. It's their grand opening, so come out and support a new local business. It's at the site of the former Romanelli's in Galloway. We'll be there tomorrow, 2 to 6, the Sports Bash on location on 97.3 ESPN. When we come back, the NBA back tonight, and I know there was one game last night, but Keith Smith from SpotTrack.com will give us the top second-half stories, thoughts on the Sixers and Celtics who get back on the court tonight right here on 97.3 ESPN. Evan Cohen on Unsportsmanlike says it's time to shut them all down. Well, guess what? They're all playing tonight. Maxey, George, Embiid, they're all back tonight. You can listen to the game on 97.3 ESPN. Keith Smith is also back. After the All-Star break, the stretch run is here. The Sixers currently on the outside looking in for the NBA playoffs and the play-in round. They'll take on the Celtics. The last time they met, Christmas Day in Boston, a full roster of Sixers were able to beat the Celtics. So let's bring Keith Smith into the conversation. Should the Sixers keep moving forward to try to get into the play-in, or do you agree it's time to shut them all down and pack it up for next year? Keith, welcome back, man. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me. Yeah, it's tough, right? Because you understand the side of if it's going to look like it did right before the All-Star break, where Joel Embiid is clearly kind of dragging that leg up and down the floor. Paul George, something just isn't right. I don't know if it's injuries or fit or both or whatever it is, that doesn't look quite right. But then the other side is, I don't know how much you got to shut it down in the East, because I don't know who wants the 10th seed. Like we're in a spot right now where it's Philly, Brooklyn, and Chicago. It might just be whoever stumbles backwards into it and is like, well, I guess we're going to play at least one more game. I don't know, that they're going to be able to fall out of the race enough just because how bad the other teams around them are.
Yeah, I mean, they're definitely in a tough spot. You're right. I mean, you get these three guys, if they're healthy, it's hard to just sit them down. The question is, are they fully healthy or not? I mean, Embiid is just such a wild card at this stage of the game. What is your thoughts on Paul George and the fit and how that's all kind of transpired?
Yeah, I think it's been what we worried about with the injuries, and it feels like it's all fits and starts, meaning they get going a little bit, and then all of a sudden somebody's out, and it's like starting all over. And there's been no momentum. Nothing has happened where they've been able to kind of build together to feel really good about moving forward. So I think that's been one of the major issues here for Philadelphia with Paul George. And then I think part of it, too, is it sounds great to have three guys who can score all the time and want the ball and can really do a lot of stuff. But when you look at the NBA, there tends to be not a lot of possessions where three guys are going to see the ball a lot. So what ends up happening with Paul George, and we've seen this when he's been on teams with other star guys, he's content to kind of, he'll play facilitator, he'll play off the ball. But what happens sometimes is that turns into he's almost invisible out there, and that's just not what you can be when you're a $49 million max contract guy.
Keith, when you saw Philly play Boston Christmas Day, did you look at that team and say, man, if this team can just get into the playoffs, they could be a problem? Or is it just too far-fetched to think you can put this team together with the lack of games they have played from the 10 spot, no less, which appears that that's the best they can do, and be a force or a factor at all?
Yeah, so there's a couple things there. One, on Christmas Day, it was like, all right, if they can be these guys. But that was, 2 months ago now. And that feels like it was yesterday, but that was a long time ago. And that was a completely different version of Joel Embiid. The comments he made recently about, I'm going to need more surgery, and when I get it, I'm going to be out for a while. There's part of me that's like, get it now. Like, what are we doing chasing the spot in the play-in tournament? Because that's the other part. In the play-in tournament, then you're going to have to win probably twice on the road just to be the 8th seed, which is then you're going up against, at this point, it'll probably be Cleveland more than likely. And then, how do you feel about that? And then you got to start to convince yourself, all right, we can make this magical run. Yes, I know the Miami Heat have done it a couple times from a lower seeded team, but that's always been a team that's felt like they're kind of playing possum through the regular season. They're just kind of getting through it. With Philadelphia, your next question needs to be, all right, well, how hard are we going to have to push? And then are we going to have anything left in the tank when we get there? And if we do, what's it going to look like for our guys? They're going to be healthy. Those are all the things you start to worry about, and that's to just have a conversation about we got there, not even to then talk about, all right, we pulled off winning and multiple wins in a row from a low seed. That's really hard.
Keith Smith covers the NBA, SpotTrack.com in the second half of the season about to start. Sixers take on the Celtics tonight. You can listen to the game on 97.3 ESPN. Yes, as Keith hinted at, they played Christmas. Philly won that game in Boston. That was, can believe it or not, Christmas was like 2 months ago. Philly also beat Cleveland with a similar lineup where they had their guys back, although they are now 7-6 in the 13 games that group has played together. But in the East, how many teams do you think have a legitimate shot to make it to the conference finals? Is it a two-team race and a big drop-off?
I think, certainly Boston and Cleveland, they're ahead of everybody else. I know Cleveland's the team that's raced out to the big lead, but you've seen the Celtics, when they have played the better teams in the conference, they've tended to show up and then really kind of handle them with more or less relative ease. And I think what they do is they kind of go out there, they lay these stinkers against bad teams, and then they play the good teams. It's like, all right, let's remind everybody we're still the champs, and it runs through here. But I think those two are really good. But I think New York's got a chance too, especially if they can get healthy. They've got to get and stay healthy. Let's see what Milwaukee can do. This Bobby Portis suspension is going to be huge for them. He's going to miss 25 of the final 29 games, and they do not have front court depth on that team at all. It's really Giannis, Kyle Kuzma, and Brook Lopez, and that's kind of it up front right now, and that's tough for Milwaukee. So they're going to have to figure out something there. And then let's see if Indiana, they've started to play better here over the last, let's call it 20 or so games. And if they have really started to figure out who they are again and what it's going to look like for them, and they get back to being the team we saw at the end of last year, I'd throw them in the mix as well. But it feels like it's Boston and Cleveland, and maybe New York if things break right for them.
All right, the season started last night with the Lakers and that stinker. Obviously, they lose to Charlotte. But now that the dust is settled, how is the deal with Luka? And then obviously the injury to Anthony Davis. How do we look at that whole thing? 2 weeks later.
Yeah, it's certainly still, Dallas fans are still going through it. And just when it looked like, all right, we're going to have to move forward if we're going to stay Mavs fans. And Anthony Davis comes out and you get kind of the full Anthony Davis experience all in one game. He played great, looked incredible, and then he got hurt. Now he's out for a while. And Mavs fans are like, man, like this was our thing. Like we get this guy for our guy, our franchise guy, the guy we felt like a decade or more we were going to have with him, and now we get this other guy who's injured all the time. That's really tough. Dallas is going to go through it a little bit here. The West is really difficult. They're in the mix with about a group of 5 or 6 teams that are battling for seeding position, and that's going to be tough for them to sort through. On the Lakers side, you're seeing it's going to be a little messy for them this season. Luka and LeBron, it's going to take them a while to get the reps together to figure it out. They had 3 turnovers between the two of them last night where Luka threw the ball away just because he doesn't know how to read where LeBron's going yet. But their bigger question is going to be their defense. They are awful. That Charlotte team, I know it was only 100 points. They shot 30-something%, but they generated 48 open to wide open three-pointers last night. They also were in a position where they missed a bunch of shots at the rim that they shouldn't have missed, and there were a lot of breakdowns. The Lakers have a lot of attack points. It's going to be rough for them to get stops. They're going to have to try to outscore teams, and in order to do that, they're going to have to be really efficient because they're not going to play a fast up-and-down game.
Keith Smith with us here, and I guess the big news today, Victor Wembanyama, it doesn't really affect much in the league. I mean, they were probably not making an impact here, but that's a huge loss for the league, who's got a little bit of an image problem right now, and you're hoping that one of the young stars can be out there. Now you don't even have that.
Yeah, and first and foremost, thank God this got caught when it did, because this is scary. These deep vein thrombosis and blood clots can become life-threatening if it's not caught early enough. And a lot of people are going to, well, this is what cost Chris Bosh his career. It's similar, but not exactly the same thing. Brandon Ingram missed a bunch of time with this similar condition, and they were able to get it corrected. And he's missed other time, but not related to that. They were able to get it corrected for him. He's never had a recurrence, and he's played since then. So we're hopeful that with Victor Wembanyama, this got caught. Everything that's coming out of San Antonio Sounds like they think this is a one-time thing, and he'll be able to move forward and have a long career, because if that's what we need. This guy is special. We all saw it at the All-Star game. You know, the things he did in there. He was one of the guys who was actually out there kind of going pretty hard, really trying to get victories. We've seen how special he is with the Spurs team as they've started to play better. You're starting to get a sense of, man, this is what this could be with this team. So let's hope, he misses the rest of this year. They get everything corrected, and he's ready to go, and has a good, long career that we never hear from this again.
Yeah, it kind of came out of nowhere today, too. I mean, you're randomly kind of sitting around getting ready for, maybe the start of a second half of the season, see what storylines are out there, and then, bam, this is kind of taking over everything. You hate to hear that. The Spurs are shutting down Victor Wembanyama for the season, and, they got 23 wins, so it's not a team that really had, a big effect on the season. But where do you look at where this league is? There seemingly has been a lot of negative, about the style of play and everything like that, the All-Star weekend, all of it. Where is the NBA currently?
Yeah, what's funny is, and I fully understand, I'm close to it. I love the game. I think the game is in really good shape, so I'm coming at it with a bias. But I get the criticism to an extent, but I think what gets missed is everybody acts like it's just a bunch of guys run up and down in straight lines, and whoever gets it shoots a three-pointer, and they miss what goes into creating that. I mean, I grew up on the NBA of the 80s and the 90s, and I can tell you, in my opinion, the game is much better now. I don't need to watch the game where 8 guys are all crammed around the paint, and the guys are missing contested 19-foot shots. I don't understand why a open 16-foot jumper is so much more beautiful to people than one that's 5 feet further back from the three-point line. It doesn't make a lot of sense to me there. And then the All-Star break and All-Star game is the perfect environment for people to get off their takes. And it didn't help the NBA at all that, here they are in their showcase moment of the league and all the talent. You've got Draymond Green up there, saying it all stinks and it's terrible and the game is awful and, these guys shouldn't be here and all the things he said. And then in game, you've got Kevin Hart, who you handed a microphone to just scream and yell about stop shooting three-pointers and all the other stuff that's out there. Like you kind of, you get that nightly on TNT anyway, and some of the ESPN guys dumping all over the game. And I think, quite frankly, it's because a lot of them know they couldn't have played in today's NBA. They weren't quick enough. They weren't fast enough. Now, I think the very best players in the world, they would have adjusted. They'd be great in any era because that's what made them great. They were able to tailor their games. But, yeah, I don't always understand the criticism of it and all that. And, it feels like we've moved on from the load management conversation to the next thing to complain about. But, overall, the league just got, billions upon billions of dollars in television media rights contracts. So I don't think they're all that worried about it there.
You're right about that. $76 billion over the next 11 seasons, the NBA. And, of course, this is the last year for the deal on TNT. It'll move to Amazon Prime and NBC. So the final stretch, you can listen tonight right here on 97.3 ESPN as the 76ers take on the Boston Celtics. And, Keith, you and I for years have been talking about, is this the Sixers' year? Is this their time? You know what will happen? This will be the one where they finally get out of the second round, right?
It wouldn't surprise me. I mean, it feels like that's how it has to go when we've all kind of given up on them and left them for dead. They're going to come back and resurrect and come through. That wouldn't surprise me at all.
Well, and by the way, they entered tonight losing 5 straight, and as you kind of chronicled, they're in a really tough spot because of that draft pick that they owe to Oklahoma City. And right now, they are on the fringe of being one of the worst 5 teams in the league. But there's no guarantee, so you have those 3 guys, you almost have to play them and take your shot, which then would turn the pick over to Oklahoma. This is not a spot that you would envy Daryl Morey to be in.
No, not at all. And I think what you're going to look at with the Sixers here is let's see what it looks like over the next, I'll call it about 3 weeks till we get to the middle of March. When we get into the middle of March, if it's still really, they're kind of right around where they are, they've been floundering around, then I think you may see some of those decisions of, hey, we're shutting player X down, we're shutting player Y down. If we back into the 10th spot, we back in, we'll figure it out from there. But I think it's going to be, let's give it a few weeks, see if these guys can really come out of the break, playing really good ball, and turn it around. Otherwise, like you said, in with that pick being top 6 protected, you really want to be in like the 5th spot so that if one team jumps up from behind you, you don't lose the pick. If you're 6th, boy, that's a risky spot because all it takes is one team jumping in, and then all of a sudden you get bounced, completely out of not having a pick at all. So that's going to be something where they're going to have to look at it. But I think their trade deadline moves were kind of smart, where they kind of played it down the middle. They're taking some opportunity to look at some young guys. They're bringing Lonnie Walker back over. Get a look at these guys, see what it looks like, and go forward from there versus, fully invested.
Well, the messaging was kind of clear that they went out this offseason, got some aging guys who didn't have it anymore. So now they're just flipping it over and say, hey, let's take a look at Quentin Grimes and Jared Butler. I think they signed Alex Reese today, and you mentioned Lonnie Walker. Let's get a little young talent in here and see if we could build that around this group of guys. But this, Keith, has been a disaster, and I don't think they saw this coming.
No, I completely agree with you. I think they are in a spot where they thought, getting Paul George, what that'll do is when Embiid needs a day or Embiid needs a week, we can do that because it'll be fine because we'll have George and Maxey, and they got a real backup for Embiid and Andre Drummond, and that's, I think, been kind of overlooked that he got hurt too. So now you're really down to Gershon Yabusele, who's really, been a bright spot that he has proven, hey, I'm an NBA guy. But unfortunately now if you're the Sixers, you're like, did he price himself out of us being able to re-sign him this summer? Like, is somebody come in with a bigger deal than what we can do? So they've really been in a tough spot. And then, early on when Embiid was down and then George was down and then Maxey had to do so much. And that's the thing I really do worry about. Nick Nurse is known. He'll push his guys really hard. He'll take, the 7-8 guys he has, and he'll play them a lot of minutes and really run them hard. And Maxey, not only is he playing a lot of minutes, but he's not out there just jogging up and down. He's out there doing everything on both ends of the floor. He's defending full court. He's pushing the ball up. He's taking a lot of punishment on his drives and in the screen game. And I do worry about, where is he going to be when we get there, at the end of the year? How much is he going to have in the tank? And the last thing you need is him picking up a major injury that carries into next season. So you got to be really, really careful with these guys going forward.
Follow him at Keith Smith NBA. The season gets back underway in full earnest tonight with the Sixers and the Celtics right here on 97.3 ESPN. Thanks, Keith.
I appreciate it. Thank you for having me.
All right, Keith Smith, as always, here on the Sports Bash Live, taking a look at the NBA, which, has been a disappointing season, no question about it. This has been one of the most brutal 76er years, I said, in the last 25 years. This might be the worst Sixers season in 25 years. All right, coming up, football at 4 is on the way. Andrew DiCecco is here in about 11 minutes on the Sports Bash, 97.3 ESPN. Hey, it's Mike Gill, and don't forget to join the Sports Bash live tomorrow for Happy Hour Friday at the brand new 279 Social Kitchen and Craft Bar in Galloway. You can enter to win tickets to see The Weeknd at Lincoln Financial Field this summer. They're also going to have a $100 opportunity for you to win out there to the new 279 Social Kitchen and Craft Bar. It's at the site of the former Romanelli's in Galloway. We'll be there tomorrow from 2 to 6. It is their grand opening, so looking forward to seeing a lot of people out there getting ready for a start of the Sixers season tonight. Hopefully a little win against the Celtics, and then the beginning of spring training tomorrow. On Saturday, and the Flyers are back on Saturday. But first, start your weekend with the Sports Bash live at 279 Social Kitchen and Craft Bar in Galloway. from InsideTheBirds.com, set to join us here to take a look at a couple of things. I want to get his thoughts on Kevin Patullo, the new offensive coordinator. Andrew has been in the locker room and around these guys all season long. Want to hear what he thinks about it. Also, want to discuss, Andrew's very big on the draft. That's what his expertise is in the offseason. He focuses in on the draft for InsideTheBirds.com. So some of the young players on the Eagles that he thinks are ready to take the next step. We'll also get his thoughts on this draft class. And the free agent, Andrew, thinks the Eagles can least afford to lose. Before we get to that, I want to tell you about my friends at Game Day Men's Health. I stopped in and saw Mike and the team at Game Days Men's Health in Egg Harbor Township, 3069 English Creek Avenue. And, I learned a lot of things by stopping in there the other day. Number one, did you know you can get blood work done there? Stop in. They can take your blood. They have an on-site lab. They can also answer some tough questions for men out there, and it is for everybody, men, women. But, if you are somebody that just has some questions about fatigue, weight loss, or any of those things that kind of enter as we get a little older, guys, check out my friends at Game Day Men's Health in Egg Harbor Township, 3069 English Creek Avenue in EHT. Tell them Mike Gill from the Sports Bash sent you. All right, we sent Andrew DiCecco to check out the Philadelphia Eagles, and, of course, they have hired their new offensive coordinator. Not a surprise, Andrew. Kevin Patullo is the new offensive coordinator here, and obviously he has been around. Give us your thoughts on them basically hiring from within. They did this a couple of years ago. It did not go well for Brian Johnson. He lasted 1 year. He was out. Why should we think this will be different?
Well, Kevin Patullo's been with the Eagles for a number of years now. He's been with Nick Sirianni for a number of years now, so he's obviously very well versed in how things are supposed to run, what Nick is looking to accomplish offensively, and this is not a coordinator who is ill prepared for the moment. I think that everything that he's been working towards has been for this moment, and I understand the trepidation from pockets of the fan base because of the Brian Johnson situation, but they didn't rush him into this role. He's been sort of building throughout the years. Yes, his name hasn't come up a ton in these coaching searches, but I believe that because he knows Nick so well, because he has the continuity of working with Jalen Hurts in the passing game, that suggests to me that there should be, I'm not going to say it's going to be a seamless transition, but I don't think there's going to be as much of a hitch as some may think.
You look at Kevin Patullo, he was the pass game coordinator. He's also the associate head coach, but his background, wide receivers coach, pass game. Do we think that this will mean a evolution to more passing in 2025?
I don't think so. Even with him presiding over the passing game, it still wasn't exactly the explosive aerial attack that we were expecting. I think you're still going to see them lean on the running game with Saquon Barkley and that offensive line and really implement sort of probably like a hybrid West Coast offense. I don't think you're going to see a drastic departure from what the Eagles have done, but probably more of a rhythmic, timing-based offense. They're always going to prioritize explosive plays. But when you have players like A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, and knowing that he's worked with them as closely as he has over the number of years, you're going to be inclined to try and get them involved and maybe open things up in the passing game a little bit more. But I really don't think the Eagles are going to deviate from what's made them so successful this season, which has been the running game, mixed, obviously intertwined with some passing game as well.
We're talking with Andrew DiCecco, Football at 4. A lot of people who listen to Football at 4, they value your opinion, Adams and Jeff's. Were you a proponent of in-house Kevin Patullo, or do you think they should have gone outside and got a different voice and maybe some new ideas with this offense? Did they leave too much meat on the bone and that they should have brought somebody else in?
Well, I certainly think in a move of this magnitude, it warrants bringing in other candidates to get a feel for what they're looking to get accomplished, where their mindset is, and how their vision, if their vision aligns with what the Eagles' philosophical approach has been. And I think to not necessarily do that, I mean, there's a couple of coaches that I think would have been worthy of another interview. Gerard Johnson, the quarterback's coach from the Houston Texans, is a coach who interviewed in the past for an Eagles vacancy at the offensive coordinator position. Nate Shieldhouse is a passing game coordinator for the Rams. And I don't think that, I mean, he obviously, they had some interest in him at some point in previous hiring cycles, but I just thought it was curious not to go that route and to kind of go with the in-house option. Obviously, when you're this late in the process, it makes it a little bit easier of a transition to go with the in-house option. And they've been grooming him for this opportunity. He hasn't solely been the pass game coordinator. He's worn a multitude of hats. He's helped Nick Sirianni in game preparation and scheduling. So and much more than that. So I think that he has taken on more of a responsibility in past years to get him ready for this role.
All right, Andrew, obviously they have the offensive coordinator in. Now let's see who they have to work with. Really no changes are set other than potentially right guard here. Kenny Gainwell is also a free agent. So when you look at this offense next year, I wouldn't anticipate a lot of changes. However, if they lose Mekhi Becton and if they lose Kenny Gainwell, are they equipped in-house to handle those losses if they in fact happen?
Well, let's start with Mekhi Becton. And this is a player, Becton he had a good season. I think to a degree, maybe it's a little bit overvalued considering that he was playing around so many other dominant players, but I thought he transitioned to guard really well. But there were times in the postseason, I could think of the Packers game. I could think of at times in the Super Bowl where maybe he didn't have the best showing as an individual, but the line as a collective did a really nice job. But there were times where Tyler Steen, as this year he was a second-year player, was kind of thrust into the lineup, whether it be left or right guard. In many cases, it was right guard in the absence of Becton. And I thought Tyler Steen did a nice job. He's also a player who's still on a rookie deal, and that might be pretty appealing. If the drop-off isn't that drastic, I think it would make a lot of sense for a team that's trying to allocate resources and be really diligent in how they do so. If you have a player that you draft in the third round like Tyler Steen, you feel comfortable with him moving forward, I think that would make a lot of sense because I think he did some good things. Now, running back, yeah, Kenny Gainwell, I believe that he's the most underrated player on the Eagles offense, but they're equipped to handle that loss if that's the way that they go, because Will Shipley, who they drafted in the fourth round last year, everything that he's been working towards, he prepares as if he's a starter. He has some juice to his game, and I just think that he's continuously grown as a player and developed throughout the season. So I think the plan was probably always in place for Will to take the reins as the running back too.
Yeah, obviously, I agree with your point on Steen. He would go into games. It seemingly almost every week he was in for somebody. You know, somebody got hurt for a series here or there. And the good part about that was you never knew Steen was in the game. I mean, that tells you that he did a really good job. Of the Eagles ready to hand the keys over to Steen, who, by the way, correct me if I'm wrong, Andrew, he was slated to be the starting right guard, and Becton was just so they were so enamored with his size that he kind of took that job over when Steen got hurt back in training camp.
Yeah, he was. That's a good memory. He was actually slated to start. He had, I believe, it was an ankle injury in camp. Mekhi Becton, that's all that he needed to really take over. You just see the size and the athleticism, and I think the Eagles became enamored with that. And Mekhi, to his credit, took advantage of the opportunity. But for some reason, Mike, Tyler Steen doesn't get the proper recognition, widespread. It seems like everyone's clamoring for the Eagles, at least on the outside, for Mekhi Becton to be re-signed. But I thought that Tyler Steen, and there has been moments, you can look at some of the penalties that haven't been great that he committed this year, but there has been moments where I thought that he looked better at right guard than Mekhi Becton. I don't think that's hyperbole, but I think he's equipped to do it. For some reason, he sort of gets a little bit dismissed by the outside, but he did a nice job when pressed into service.
I'm talking to Andrew DiCecco, Football 4 here on the Sports Bash. And when we look at the offensive line, I think we just look at Steen, but are there any other young prospects that you like that might be in competition if they let Becton walk?
Well, Trevor Keegan's there. He's there. He would be a second-year player out of Michigan. He's more of a left guard. He can play even center in a pinch, but he's not on the level of Tyler Steen right now. He's still more of a developmental project. And he was inactive for all but one game this year, so it gave him a different perspective. And you wonder how players like that come back after a year of working with Jeff Stoutland, so you never want to discredit that. But I really do think that Tyler Steen's done enough. He kept having to get plugged in to put enough good things on tape that maybe if you're the Eagles, you're giving that some consideration as you look at the money and where you want to dedicate it to. I mean, I think that if you have a young offensive lineman there that you can plug in, it might make some sense to lean on that.
You take a look at wide receiver real quick. Let's go because you have Brown and Smith there, but Dotson they traded for. I know Anais Smith, didn't do much this year, but are there guys that you think could take a jump, a step in that position that maybe can add more to the pass game if they in fact do choose to throw the ball more?
Yeah, I think Johnny Wilson is a player that I'm not expecting him to take this seismic leap as a player, but become more of a factor more beyond the blocking element because he does do that really well, and the Eagles like that. I think he can be a competent red zone presence the more comfortable that he gets within the offense. Jalen Hurts has a ton of confidence in Johnny Wilson. Anais Smith, I've gotten to know him a little bit this season, talking to him, overcame injuries, overcame a really bad training camp enough to make the team. Well, he was on injured reserve, but and then he was then eventually activated, and he scored his first touchdown late in the season when the Eagles played a lot of their reserves. But that's a player that I think he just needed time. Not everybody progresses at the same rate. He was kind of thrown into the deep end and not necessarily be able to handle that. And I think going through practice, going through meetings, seeing how veterans conduct themselves, all those things start to add up, and you're able to build on that experience and those and the advice that you're given. And he started to get more confident. And I really do believe that once he got more confident, he was playing faster and seeing things faster. And as a result, you saw that later in the season when he did have to play in that one game, he looked like he looked like he belonged out there. So he's another player that we talk about. Maybe Britton Covey doesn't come back. Cooper DeJean more than likely won't be your punt returner next year. Well, Anais Smith has that in his on his resume that he can do that. Right. So I think he's going to get a long look.
All right, that's a little look at the offense and what's over there on that side of the ball, what could be coming up if they lose a guy like Becton or Gainwell. On the defense, they have more guys. Let's start with Milton Williams. If he were to walk, and there's good indications that he's going to get a lot of money, that's a spot where they do have some younger guys behind him. So let's talk a little bit about who could step up if Milton Williams walked.
Moro Ojomo would be the player that I think is going to take the biggest leap forward. But from a defensive line standpoint, I just think that you look at, he was playing more snaps than Jordan Davis late in the season, but it was beyond that. It might not show up on the stat sheet, but he's effective at collapsing the pocket, really advanced hand usage compared to his rookie season, good burst, and I think he showed some pretty good power at the point of attack for being an undersized player. He's ready for an elevated role, but he's probably best suited to be a third tackle. And I thought Thomas Booker, though he played very sporadically during the season, he was active for every game, and I thought that he maximized his opportunities. Vic Fangio has been a Thomas Booker fan, and he's probably, he's going to bump up the depth chart or at least have the opportunity to do so, and I would expect the Eagles to look to the draft to add to that room because really beyond Jalen Carter, then you're now asking Jordan Davis to take on a larger role, and I'm not so sure that's really in the cards for him. And then Moro Ojomo, he really hasn't been asked to do it. He's an undersized player, so you worry about the potential of wearing down and minimizing his effectiveness if he has to play suddenly an exorbitant amount of snaps.
Yeah, and Gabe Hall's another guy who's here that was a high draft choice. Keep an eye on him as well.
I mentioned him on my podcast that he's a dark horse player that if you want to look at one of their future signings that has an opportunity to fight his way onto the 53, it's Gabe Hall. They gave him a decent amount of money when he signed as an undrafted free agent last summer. Going to stay at $295 this year. That's his playing weight, and he can play really any position on the defensive line. So seeing him all season long and talking about where he's grown and what he's worked on, he said going against Landon Dickerson teaches you all the lessons you need to know. And he mentioned that Landon won pretty much every single matchup. And he said, I learned some tough lessons.
Good stuff. Andrew DiCecco, let's go out to the edge where Josh Sweat is another guy. A lot of people think that he will get a big deal and likely walk. Are there young edge guys here that didn't get a lot of playing time or got some playing time that can take on a bigger role?
Not really. This is an area that I think the Eagles are going to have to address in the draft, if not free agency, if they go for the big swing, because Bryce Huff, we'll have to see. Maybe another year learning Vic Fangio's defense, and maybe he's just a late bloomer, and all of a sudden he's able to flip the switch. But Nolan Smith and Jalen Hunt, I'll say this right now, I'm circling him as the one player that I'm expecting to take the largest leap forward in year two, because everything you saw, he was progressing at a tremendous rate, getting stronger, having a better sense for how to attack and exploit offensive tackles, and use his hands a lot better. He just was becoming more confident, more comfortable, and it was noticeable throughout the season. So, but beyond that, they don't really have anyone. They have KJ Henry, who they signed to a futures deal. He's a second-year player out of Clemson, and they have O'Shawn Mathis, who played in one game for the Eagles this year. These guys are more developmental or training camp. I don't want to say training camp bodies, but they're more long shot type of players. They're going to have to really bolster that group in the.
All right, let's go to Baun in the event that he left. Dean obviously has the injury. Trotter drafted last year. What if Baun left with what's left over? How would that look?
Well, then that leaves you with an injured Nakobe Dean and Trotter Jr. and Van Sumeren. Van Sumeren's exclusive rights free agent, but that's not going to cost them much to keep. I believe that he's almost a lock to stay. But I mean, you have to re-sign Oren Burks, I would think, because he's familiar with the defense. Probably not going to break the bank to bring him back. But yeah, they don't have. There's not a ton there. There's Dallas Gant, who was active for 2 games off the practice squad. He was a undrafted free agent signing last summer of the Vikings. The Eagles added him to the practice squad on November 4th, and he was able to kind of help them out there. But I mean, he's more of a developmental prospect. They need to add, if they can't retain Baun, sign a free agent or draft one fairly high, because that would severely deplete their depth.
Secondary, Slay, obviously, contract situation there. We had a lot of young guys in camp last year. Everybody was wondering and, kind of excited about what that young battle would look like with a plethora of guys. They're now going into like their 3rd year, a lot of these guys. So if Slay walked, do they have enough talent in-house, or would you rather see them maybe get a veteran player to replace Slay?
Well, if Slay walks, I think that lends itself to Isaiah. You almost have to re-sign Isaiah Rodgers. But I really do believe that you have Cooper DeJean, you have Quinyon Mitchell. Kiwi Ringo is still, people forget, he's younger than Quinyon Mitchell, but he's now entering his 3rd season. He's an outside player, and depending on how the Eagles view Cooper DeJean, because I believe that he can play on the outside, and I'm sure the Eagles do as well, that would, let's say hypothetically, you have Cooper DeJean and Quinyon Mitchell, who plays the nickel role. I still think you need to add another player there, even if Slay stays, because I think long-term Cooper DeJean's an outside corner. And so I think that they're going to add to that. That's a position group. You talk about edge rusher, corner, offensive line. Those are positions that the Eagles will invest in, and I do believe that they will, regardless of whether Slay is back for a final season or not.
All right, that's a look at some of the in-house options here quickly while we have Andrew DiCecco for Football at 4 here. They have pick 32. That's a spot where a lot of times you try to get out of that spot. But let's get your first initial thoughts on the 2025 draft class. Is this one that you're excited about? Is there, a lot of depth in this year's draft? Let's get your first thoughts, Andrew. I know a lot of people this time of the year want to hear your thoughts on the draft. So here we go. Draft season officially around the corner. What is your thoughts on this draft class?
Yeah, I like the depth on the defensive line, particularly at defensive tackle and edge rusher. Tight end is a lot deeper than it was in past years, and we'll get into more of that. But there's a player that could be floating around at 32. I know at this point of the year you hear a million different people say there's no way player X is going to be there at that time. You really have no idea. We're so early in the process that it's almost malpractice to declare that a certain player won't be somewhere. But Walter Nolan from Ole Miss is a defensive lineman that I think he gives you that Milton Williams-esque with more explosiveness. That would be, it could be in the mix there at 32. I also think they need to start thinking about, I think it's imperative actually that the Eagles draft a tight end this year, because you don't know what's going to happen with Dallas Goedert. Dallas Goedert is owed a lot of money, and I think he's only finished 7 games last year. So they're going to have to start thinking about life post Dallas Goedert and add to that group, because I think both Goddard and Grant Calcaterra are entering their final year of their deal.
Yeah, and by the way, Goddard missed some games this year, and the Eagles' offense, they just kept on plugging along without him. So we'll see. I agree with you on the tight end thing. Before we get out of here, a couple quick things. Let's get your take on which free agent that they have that you think they can least afford to let walk?
Zach Bond, because of the lack
you and I
of
agree there,
and because of how impactful he was in transforming that defense. I don't believe he was a one-year wonder. I think the best is still yet to come because he hasn't played a ton of defense in his career. And another year working with Vic Fangio and linebackers coach Bobby King, I just think that would be invaluable. I think that's a must sign.
Last one earlier today, Adam Schefter put out there that Cam Jurgens underwent back surgery to alleviate nerve pain. Now we know why he was unable to play or start the NFC Championship game. He did finish that game when Landon Dickerson went out. He did play in the Super Bowl, but now back surgery. They do expect a full recovery. But I guess when you get back surgery, you got to start watching that. So when we were talking about younger players, they don't really have a young option behind Jurgens to play center, do they not?
No, they don't. So I think you need to get younger there anyway, because really Landon Dickerson was their backup center. He would slide over. Nick Gates was always inactive, and now he's been since released since the parade. So I think they need to add a young player there anyway. And I think this even heightens that importance because I do believe that Cam Jurgens is going to be in line for a contract extension, of course, but they still need to have a viable option as a reserve center and not have to rely on sliding Landon Dickerson over mid-game.
All right, Andrew, it's a busy time. Obviously, free agency is going to be key for this team. Will they retain? Will they bring in some new faces? They've already brought in a new offensive coordinator. Free agency begins on March the 10th. And, of course, the NFL Draft will have that covered for you. You can check out Andrew over at InsideTheBirds.com and right here on the Sports Bash. Thanks, buddy.
Thank you.
All right, that was a good one with Andrew. A lot of good information for us here on the Sports Bash as we take a look at this Eagles team as they get ready to try to go for back-to-back. And, of course, Football at 4 brought to you by Bet365. Whatever the sport, whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. I'm Mike Gill. This is the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN, the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app, and live video streaming on the X platform and on YouTube at Mike Gill Show. We got so much more to go. Now, normally, Nicky Nuggets is on the way here, but Nuggets is coming up with a special edition of the Nuggets today. That is at 5 o'clock today on the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN. So Nuggets at 5 o'clock tonight. So when we come back, we're going to dive into some of the stuff we've been talking about. We'll get your text messages. We'll hit on a bunch of those. 609-403-0973 on the text board. 609-403-0973. If you have a text you want to get into the show on our Eagles conversation, Philly stuff from earlier with Todd Zolecki, the Sixers getting ready to start the second half of their season tonight against the Celtics, the Four Nations that is happening tonight, USA, Canada. We've touched on it all. We want to hear from you. 609-403-0973. Send us a text. We'll hit on those coming up next.
Prescriptions require an online consultation with a healthcare provider who will determine if appropriate. Restrictions apply. See website for details and important safety information. Price varies based on product and subscription plan.
Hey guys, let's talk ED because millions of men experience it, but not everyone can access or afford treatments like Viagra. Well, Hims can help. Through Hims.com, you can get a full range of treatment options for ED, including daily or as-needed meds through a 100% online process. It all starts with an online intake form. Get started at hims.com/joy, and from there, a medical provider licensed in your state will determine if ED treatment is right for you. If prescribed, your medication is shipped to you for free. Find the ED treatment that fits your needs with options up to 95% less than the brand names. Millions of men experience ED, but Hims can help. To start your free online visit and save up to 95%, go to hims.com/joy. That's hims.com/joy for your free online visit. HIMS.com/JOY.
This is the Town Square, New Jersey Info and Weather Network.
It's the Sports Bash with Mike Gill.
And I am the voice of the voiceless.
On 97.3 ESPN and the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app.
All right, 4:30. Earnshaw with the Nuggets at 5 o'clock tonight, so he'll be up in about a half an hour. Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN. I'm Mike Gill. Josh Henning, my producer. So we got a bunch of text messages from earlier in the show today that we haven't got a chance to hit on yet. So let's bang out some of the texts right now. 609-403-0973. You got Eagles offseason, all the free agency stuff. That's obviously, a lot of people have that on their mind. You've got Phillies. You heard Todd Zolecki earlier pretty much say that Trea Turner is going to be the leadoff guy, Harper number 2, Bohm number 3, Schwarber number 4, Castellanos, Bryson Stott, JT Realmuto. So it's pretty much the lineup that I wrote about a couple of weeks ago. Sounds like that's what the Phillies are going to do. I thought Zolecki gave us a lot of great information on the season. Not a lot of stories, though, he said, down there. It's really the last roster spot and maybe somebody in the bullpen. So if you're into Philly spring training, it's going to be more for you just love baseball, not because you want to see some stories, because there's not a lot happening with them. And I agree with them. I think the one pitching decision will be, what do you do with Taijuan Walker, right? Is he a guy that you just say, hey, we're paying him, we have to keep him around? That's number one. And then the last roster spot, is it Cody Clemens? Is it Weston Wilson? He mentioned Johan Rojas, something to that effect. So those are some of the stories we had. And then Keith Smith on the Sixers. And, even Keith, a guy who covers the league and covers the NBA, doesn't really have an answer what the Sixers should do because, and I talked about this earlier, so Victor Wembanyama is out for the year. Right?
Correct.
And why does that affect the Sixers? Well, it affects the Sixers for this reason. San Antonio has 23 wins with Victor Wembanyama.
Right.
Without him, they're probably going to be pretty bad.
Right. There's going to be a massive drop-off for them.
So that would be a team now, because people want the Sixers to kind of tankaroo the rest of this season. And to my, I keep saying, well, listen, I understand, and listen, I'm all for saying this team's not winning a title. This team stinks. The problem is they don't stink enough. Now you're stuck in no man's land where you're not bad enough, but if you make the playoffs, you're really not a factor. So what do? Do you get into the playoffs, or do you miss the playoffs and still lose your draft pick? Because right now, Philadelphia has 20 wins. So if you look at that, in the entirety of the league, there is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 teams worse than them. They are number 7, which means they would currently not have their draft pick if everything fell perfectly. It's top 6 protected, which means they would have to get basically one of the top 5, 6 picks. Otherwise, they have to give that first. So if they get the 7th pick of the draft, it's going to Oklahoma City.
Correct.
That's a kick in the you-know-whats.
Yeah, and honestly, if you were going to pull the plug in the season, you should have done it a while ago. You shouldn't have waited until February 20th to maybe even consider that. That should have been something that they should have realized at some point, let's say mid-January.
They're in a tough spot, man. I get it.
I
it's
know
easy
they're
to
in a
say
no-win
from here.
situation, but at the same time, there is, for a lot of Sixer fans I run into, Mike, the vibe and the feeling that this organization doesn't really have a direction. They feel rudderless. And, no offense, but we didn't see or hear from Daryl Morey till basically after the trade deadline. There should have been a point when all this stuff was happening where we should have gotten a little bit of a clarity of, here's the plan.
Oh, listen, I'm not defending
message.
them. They have done an awful job. This whole season has been a disaster for them. I also think, as Keith said, this was not something they expected. I think they look in the mirror and say, how the heck did we get here?
Oh, yeah, no one expects you to have this many injuries. I mean, and the way they all happened was just so bizarre.
Well, that's the thing. You'd get Paul George back, and you're like, okay. And as Keith kind of said, all right, Embiid's not playing tonight. Well, the whole point of getting a guy like Paul George is, well, if Embiid's not here, I now have Paul George and Tyrese Maxey that I can kind of lean on for the night. Well, that didn't work. So the team has been a disaster. It's been a mess. You go back to January, we talked about it. Keith Smith brought up the same game. They beat the Celtics and the Cavaliers. So you're looking at that team and saying, we just beat the 2 best teams in the league with a full roster. Why would I look at this team and say I should pull the plug on it? So I get people's frustrations. It's easy to say that from, 50,000 feet in the air and look down and say, what were you thinking? Oh, I'm thinking we just beat Boston on Christmas Day. Then we followed it up by beating Cleveland. They're the 2 best teams in the league. What should we have thought of ourselves?
When they had the 5-game winning streak in January, and they did it without Embiid, and they did it without Paul George, there was a sense of, okay, maybe they can do something. But then the problem is you got to the deadline and you had the same conundrum you had last year, right? Which was, well, how much do we try to go in at the deadline when we don't really know what our team looks like because we don't have Embiid?
The whole Embiid thing has been a total nightmare for them because you can't move on from him. You couldn't trade him. And everybody said, get rid of Embiid. You couldn't get rid of Embiid.
Correct.
Well, now you're in a situation where you don't know if he's available from night to night. When he is available, you almost have to play him. It's one of those seasons where you just don't – there is no right answer unless you just had the foresight to know these guys aren't healthy. We're just sitting them down. Well, the problem is you don't know that Paul George is going to tear a tendon in his pinky finger.
Or Embiid is going to get hit in the face for the 200th time.
Well, and that kept him out for about a week, And listen, I'm the first one to tell you this has been the worst. I said this has been the worst season in 25 years. The worst. The worst. This is worse than the Bynum year. This is worse than any process year. This season is the worst, and it's the worst from the top to the bottom. It's the worst messaging. It's the worst from the owner. It's the worst from the injuries. It's the worst because of the expectations. It's the worst because the team's not fun. It's the worst because the coach is, listen, I'm not a blame the coach guy, and I'm not blaming Nick Nurse, but he don't help himself. He's a absolute mope out there. His body language sucks. Looks like he has zero desire to be on the sideline half the time, and then it doesn't help the team out where you got the guy who's leading in the face of the team basically talking every night who seems like, I don't want to be here either. The whole season has been a disaster, and if you were to say right now, what do I do? Do I just pull the plug on it? What do you do when you start the second half of the season, and it's like a high school coach who's got a baseball or basketball or football team, and you know the team's not going to be that good, but all the seniors sign up, and you're like, well, I don't want to play these guys. I want to play the young guys, right? And here are the seniors who have been there the whole way through. They sign up, and you're like, well, you guys weren't any good as juniors or sophomores. I gave you those chances, but now that you're back out, I almost have to play you because of what you've done for the program. And here are the Sixers seniors saying, well, here we are. You got to play us. And it's almost like Nick Nurse and the organization rather say, no, we don't want you to play. We rather those guys play. Like they're in a horrible situation.
It is definitely a no-win situation. And I don't think there's a right answer to any of this necessarily, Mike, but I will say that I do think that giving the fans nothing at this point and making them feel hopeless is the worst thing for the brand, because you could argue this is the first time since Andrew Bynum was here that fans legitimately feel hopeless about this team.
Well, it's not even that they feel hopeless now. Now they dislike the team.
There's that too, yeah.
That's what it has become. You have turned from a hopelessness to a dislike. The fans dislike this team. They legitimately do not like this team. That's not a good spot to be in. For years, it was the processors against the anti-processors and that whole battle. The problem with that is the guys that were fans of the process are in their mid-20s at that time.
Right.
They're now in their mid-30s and are starting to get a little bit more hard that this hasn't been what I thought or this didn't work. And now they're fatigued. So you do not have a pocket of fans that had your back. Those people who had your back are now older and they don't have your back anymore. And the younger crowd has been disappointed so much that now everybody's turned on them. And, I get it. I totally understand it. You were a fan 2013. They tell you, hey, trust the process. You're on board. You saw all these young, exciting players. Sadly, many of them didn't work out. They had a lot of fun seasons. It took you on some wild rides. But that's not good enough for everybody. They never got out of the second round. I get it. So many people look at it that the whole thing was a failure. Other people are saying, look, I gave you 10 years of my fandom at a high level. This isn't acceptable. There was a lot of people when they signed Paul George, I don't think were in love with signing Paul George.
No, they weren't, because they pointed out, one, his injury history, and two, there was a lot of, oh, here comes Chris Webber joining Allen Iverson vibes.
Yeah, I mean, you got a guy at the later stages of his career who's been injury prone.
Yep.
Not quite the Chris Webber vibes, but you're down the right path where, I think Paul George is still a pretty good player when he's healthy.
Oh, yeah, he's still a good player, but the problem is that you're presenting the fans with such a specific scenario that has to happen for this to win. Because one of the reasons why people bought into the Sixers 6, 7, 8 years ago was because the players were young and they had upside, and it was, excuse me, man, can you imagine what this team would do when they get more mature, and when they get better, and when they get more developed? It was creating the promise. It was creating the sense of a bright future. And now you feel like the whole team is just the AARP club.
Well, right. You went from a young team with all the assets and young players to the old team that really doesn't have a lot to look forward to. And now you have a team where those older players are bringing you down to where you might lose the one asset you do have, a potential top 5 pick. So I know people out there. I'm not questioning you. You're perfectly within your rights to say, I hate this team. I hate this team. You are fair to say that because this team has done nothing to make you embrace them. Show me a little love. Show me something. Instead, you've got a kick in the groin from every single angle. Joel Embiid's not ready to start the season. By the way, neither is Paul George. Not going to play back-to-back, so take that. 609-403-0973, 609-403-0973. They've lost 5 in a row, all right? So they entered the All-Star break losers of 5 straight.
And don't forget, some of those losses were against teams who were shorthanded. They lost to a Pistons team without Cade Cunningham. They lost to a Bucks team without Giannis playing that night. And they lost to a Raptors team that were just coming off the trade deadline that traded players for Brandon Ingram, and Ingram wasn't playing, and Podol wasn't playing either that night.
And they lost to a Brooklyn team on a night where, we have a week off, but none of our guys are available tonight.
Right. No one's available to play the one game before your 7 days off.
Right. So, yeah, it's a stretch of games where you lost to Miami, Detroit, Milwaukee, Toronto, and Baltimore. You've lost 5 straight games. And now, here's one thing, okay? This is another – throw this wrinkle into all of this conversation.
But wait, there's more?
They have the 4th easiest schedule left the rest of the way.
I mean, that's even more of a slap in the face.
That's what I'm saying. So there's another wrinkle to this where it's like, well, look who they have coming up. Brooklyn, Chicago, Portland, Utah, Toronto. I mean, and you would say, well, who cares? These teams have already beaten you. You're absolutely right to think that way. I'm just saying these are teams that at this stage of the season, they don't have a lot of interest in winning either.
Right.
So that's what makes it really difficult. And when you have a team that's not all that interested in winning, and you're the more talented team, we'll see what ends up happening here. They're in a terrible spot, and this franchise right now, look, this thing has been an absolute disaster for them. Absolute PR disaster for them because there's no way they can spin this to make people say, you know what? I'll give you the benefit of the doubt. It's just been terrible.
Well, because what are you giving the benefit of the doubt with? For?
Nothing. Exactly. Nothing. You got nothing to say, I'll give you the benefit of the doubt. Like, over the years, listen, I've been a pretty rational guy. They've had teams that have lost. They had teams that just, people wanted them to beat veteran teams when they were in their 2nd and 3rd year. That just doesn't happen in the NBA. There's no young teams that just walk onto the floor and win championships. Like, they needed to lose a couple of times. But the problem became you lost patience in some of the young guys, so then you tried to rush through it. And that's fine. But then you rushed through it, you still didn't win, and then that made you have to make decisions. Because some of the older guys, Jimmy Butler, didn't want to play with some of the younger guys because he was thinking these guys aren't ready to win yet. So you had to make a decision. Fine. They made the decision to keep Ben Simmons over Jimmy Butler. Now, today, of course, you're belly laughing hysterically at how bad of a decision that was. But at the time, that's the decision you have to make. They have had nothing go their way. Nothing go their way. So, yeah, there is no benefit of the doubt, and they don't deserve the benefit of the doubt.
But really quick, if I can backtrack something you said before, which is fans, you gave them a reason to watch. I have a buddy of mine. He's texted me this multiple times. He's a diehard Sixer fan. Him and I went to high school together. And he always says to me multiple times this year, I had more fun watching the process Sixers than I do this team. And I keep asking, and he tells me, when I ask him why, he says, because this team doesn't try.
It might have been your buddy who texted that very thing in yesterday. I have no problem with that comment. I had more fun with the process teams than this team is not fun at all. There is no part of this team that is fun. I said this is the only team. This team here is the only team that is bad enough that could take the joy away from watching Tyrese Maxey play. I don't even enjoy watching him play anymore. I feel that he's got sucked into the slop.
I will never get the image out of my head. One of the games, Mike, when you were away, they showed him in the locker room, and he's in a chair leaning back, and he looks like the joy of anything in the existence of the universe had been drained from him.
Me having to sit in this locker room with this group of guys,
excuse of a basketball team,
has stripped the joy away. And I totally agree with that that night. I remember the night you're talking about. Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN. I'm Mike Gill. Sixers and Celtics tonight. Hey, if they win tonight, today, drag you back? Doubtful. They would really have to go on and start ripping some games off. I'm talking Boston tonight, Brooklyn, Chicago. They play the Knicks on Wednesday.
Wait, so Jimmy
Butler's back here on Saturday.
Really quick, how long do you watch the Sixers game till you flip over to the hockey game?
Somebody texted earlier, Glenn from Northfield. What you watching tonight? Sixers at 7 against the Celtics. USA-Canada championship game at 8. He says, I'm intense on the hockey games. Full season of disappointment for the Sixers. I'm exhausted from them. I'm just more of a hoop guy than I am a hockey guy. So I'll probably watch the Sixer game. I might flip over there, and if the Sixers are just showing no effort or getting the doors blown off them, I might pop in. I did finish Night Agent last night, so I don't even have a show to watch. Damn it. More Sports Bash coming up. All right, 453, Sports Bash, 97.3 ESPN. A couple text messages I'll try to hit on real quick. Mike, March Madness, then the Phillies, Sixers, and Flyers are irrelevant. Well, March Madness isn't quite here yet, but I'm on board with that. I'll be on the March Madness. Come on, Mike, the hockey game is must-see, G and OC. See, here's the thing, G. Like, I'm not into, like, the WBC and whatever this Four Nations is. Like, okay, they win that thing. What does that mean? I don't. What am I gaining out of that? Like, I'm a sports fan. I want to win something. Like, the Four Nations, I won. Great. Why do I care?
You don't have national pride.
Yeah, I mean, but still, like, the Four Nations, you didn't play like Russia wasn't involved. They're one of the best nations. So it was kind of, like, it's like, it's why I don't like soccer. I can't figure out, like, these random tournaments. Why? Who cares? They don't do anything for me. I can't put too much investment in these. There's too many of them. You know, the World Baseball Classic. Okay, who wins it? What's the difference?
Hey, man, the Europeans love their random tournaments.
I know. I'm not European, though. But I have no problem with people getting on board, supporting, watching. Probably just not for me. That's all. We'll see. I might tune in. It might grab me. We'll see. Earnshaw, Nuggets, next. 5 o'clock, Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN. Driving you home, Mike Gill and the Sports Bash, 97.3 ESPN. Got a lot coming in. I got this one from Jack and Cape May Courthouse. Mike, if you need a show to watch, please watch The Day of the Jackal on Peacock. Well, I got to stop you right there. I don't have Peacock, so if anybody has a new show, send it to me, 609-403-0973. I just finished Night Agent Season 2. There will be a Season 3 coming out, though, so I don't know when that's going to be. A lot of the shows that I've watched, I'm at the end of the line, so I need some new ones now.
Well, I keep telling you, I watch Heels on Netflix.
Yeah, I don't know that I can get Heidi to watch that one with me, though.
She just doesn't – it's not into anything like that?
It's a tough one. Hey, you want to watch a show about wrestling?
Well, it's a drama.
I got you. But you know what I'm saying.
I don't know. I think it was an interesting show. I think it does a great.
I'll broach the topic.
You'll broach the topic.
See if she's interested.
Well, the other thing is Suits LA starts soon.
Yeah, I do see that. I don't love that I don't know. I mean, I like Suits. I don't love that the cast is going to be all different. Like that's going to seem a little like who are these guys? But we'll see.
I guess you never watched any of the CSIs.
No, never watched any of the CSIs or NCIS or anything like that. So, but if you have a new show for me, I don't have Peacock.
You don't have Hulu, right?
Don't have Hulu.
Okay.
I don't have Disney Plus. So those are some of the limitations. I do have Prime. I do have Netflix. I do have Apple TV Plus. And I do have Nick Earnshaw for another edition of Nick's Nuggets here on the Sports Bash. They're brought to you by the Fanatics Sportsbook at Ocean Casino Resort in Atlantic City. And he joins me now. A little special 5 o'clock drive home edition of the Nuggets. What's up, Nicky?
Hey, what's going on, Mike? How are you today? Lots going on. And, you know, I got a show for you. Just go to a comfort show at this point. If you can't find something to watch, you got to go to the comfort show. Comfort shows like Seinfeld.
I watched Seinfeld the other night.
Easy.
I watched 2 episodes of Seinfeld the other night. It was the first time I had seen it in a long time. Like, I haven't just sat down, but I did watch 2 episodes the other night. Serenity Now! I saw that one. And what was the other one that was on before that? Man, I forget. But, yeah, I did go to the old school show. But, you know, like, sometimes you try to – this time of the year, Sixers stink, Flyers – are rough to get into still. Phillies aren't quite here yet. You need that friend with you every single night. So you got to find a show that, you know, probably gives you a couple seasons that you can get into.
Yeah, and there's nothing wrong with a rewatch either. You can rewatch a show if you can't find anything. I mean, there's an abundance of shows out there that you can choose from, and that's why it makes it so difficult to lock one down.
Well, I'm looking forward to seeing people give me some ideas here. 609-403-0973 if you have a show that you think I should start watching. Because, quite frankly, I don't know how much more of the Sixers I can take, man.
Yeah, I don't know how you can watch that team anymore. It's just brutal. They're back tonight against Boston. Maybe they'll get us back in tonight, right? Like they beat them on Christmas. I mean, why not again, right?
Well, you got a Sixers 3/4 zip on. It's a nice one there. If the Sixers beat Boston tonight, are you back in?
I'm like, I don't even know what I am right now. I don't know if I'm in, I'm out. I mean, they're right there. They're hanging on by a thread to get into the play-in. Like, this is we've talked about this. This is such a Sixers season where they're going to shock everybody, magically be healthy by the end of the year, and make a little run in the postseason. That would be so Sixers because everyone hates them right now. Hates them.
This is the least fun team in 25 years.
Yeah, I don't see it happening. It's a little bit of a pipe dream. I got to find a show as well. Hulu, Netflix, I don't know. I'll find something because I don't know if I can watch this team anymore. I'm going to the game on Saturday.
I don't know if I can watch it, but I'm going.
Yeah, I'm going to go to the game. I'm going for a buddy's birthday. So there's that, okay?
You know, I haven't gone to a game this year. It's the first time in a while I have not been. You know, when they were in the process, I went probably 20 games a season during the process years.
Well, you can afford. It's about process tickets now. That's how much the prices are now. They're down to about $4 a ticket for nosebleeds. So there's nothing wrong with that.
So what are you doing tonight? You going Four Nations?
I think you have to go Four Nations tonight. I think that's the only correct choice.
See, I'm just not I'm not enough. Like these little side tournaments, like I don't get any satisfaction out of the victory.
Yeah, but I like the countries facing off. It gives it an Olympics feel, right? You get USA versus Canada, a little rivalry, a little political stuff behind it as well, with all the Canada stuff going on.
I'm just not into politics really either. Like I think people who are into politics are have screw looses. I have a sane mind up here.
It's a little more intriguing with that.
No, but that's it. Like, are you into the? I guess you're a World Baseball Classic guy.
Absolutely love the WBC, love it, and I wish Trea Turner would translate that to the Philadelphia Phillies what he did last time.
Yeah, see that World Baseball Classic does nothing for me. I just can't get into it.
I enjoy that. I like the Olympic stuff. I like the World Baseball Classic. I like the Four Nations. I'll be locked into that. I'll touch on the Sixers. I'll see. Let me get an update. If it's close, maybe I'll tune in for a little bit. But we got to start with the Nuggets, Mike, and we got to start with the Birds like we have been over the past couple of weeks since the Super Bowl win. A.J. Brown and a ton of other Eagles are doing their podcast rounds now, okay? They're going on every single podcast, player podcast.
Nobody more than Cooper DeJean.
Oh, yeah, Coop's been everywhere. He's turning into an absolute superstar. But A.J. Brown was on a podcast today, and it comes out, he was asked about Myles Garrett, and he straight up said they want to bring in Myles Garrett. They want him to be a Philadelphia Eagle. Mike, do you believe that with the players and everything going on surrounding Myles Garrett, they are going to maybe attempt to try and woo him here and Howie Roseman attempts to get a deal done?
I do. I think as long as the Browns are willing to listen, which they have given no indication at this time yet, if they do, the Eagles will make a call. That's why Howie Roseman's the best GM in football. He calls on everything. He always, no stone unturned. He will make the call. No question about it. I've said this all offseason. To me, this offseason for Howie Roseman, this will be his Dodgers offseason. We won the championship, and we're going to even get better. And I think there's a big move for him to say, we didn't rest on winning one Super Bowl. We're going after two. So if Myles Garrett's available, yes, I think the Eagles will call. Now, do they have enough to get a deal done? They have a 32nd pick. That's the worst pick in the first round. Their pick next year will not be all that attractive because they'll probably be a good team again. So future firsts aren't all that attractive from them either. They don't really have a player on the roster that fits trade me mold. So I feel like it would be an uphill battle, but I think they'll be involved.
Yeah, I think so too. And remember, down at Radio Row, we had Dimitroff on, and he talked about Howie Roseman, right? Like, Howie Roseman would call you for second-round picks all the time. He'd badger you. And he even mentioned that the younger GMs don't even want to deal with Howie. They're scared to deal with him because they think they're going to get fleeced. So the fact that Dimitroff was saying that down at Radio Row has to make you believe Howie's at least making the call, and he's probably going to put an offer in to try and get him. It seems like Myles Garrett wants to go to a team that can win a Super Bowl. That's the Philadelphia Eagles. They're defending champs now. That's a team that I could see definitely being involved. And also, you have to look at it from the standpoint of all of the free agents as well, Mike. You have, Milton Williams is a free agent. Josh Sweat's probably going to be gone because of the whole thing that happened last offseason with the pay cut. So you're going to have to fill that need as well and replenish the defensive line with those young Georgia Bulldogs on that line with Carter and Davis. So I think it makes a whole lot of sense. It feels like an Eagles move to go get a guy like Myles Garrett.
Okay, let me ask you this. This is the one that we threw around earlier. Would you trade Nolan Smith for Myles Garrett? First round pick, Nolan Smith, because he's one young player that the Browns might say, okay, that's one guy on your roster we're interested in.
No, I wouldn't give up Nolan Smith. I feel like Nolan Smith's going to turn into a Brandon Graham-esque player. Defensive line has that personality that everybody loves. I don't think you can move on from a Nolan Smith at this point. I get Myles Garrett, but I wouldn't include him in a trade. I feel like you can't touch him right now.
Okay.
Would you give up Nolan Smith? I wouldn't give up Nolan Smith for Myles Garrett right now. I wouldn't do it.
Depends. I think the Eagles think they have 2 to 3 more windows of this core playing at their peak.
Okay,
who's going to be better over the next 2 years, Myles Garrett or Nolan Smith? And if your answer is Nolan Smith, you have a screw loose.
It's not. It's the fact that you can have him for a long time. Now, would you include Jalix Hunt and other picks and higher level picks, like a third rounder, second rounder, in trying to get Myles Garrett and pair him with Nolan Smith?
I might think about it, but, again, I'm going with the guy who makes the decision tougher here, which is Nolan Smith. Yeah, Nolan Smith will be better longer. That I understand. He's the younger player.
Yeah.
But you might get a really good Nolan Smith with a team that is now out of its window. I need the best player in the window.
I hear you. I feel like they can maybe swing a trade without having to give him up, though. I think they could swing it. If they maybe include a Jalen Sutton who's young, who shows some promising signs, add a few more picks in there. I think picks are really going to be the key to this trade, and multiple round picks are going to be the key.
Well, that's where I think the Eagles have a problem, because their picks are not all that attractive because they're the worst picks in every single round.
But if you give an abundance of picks, I think that's attractive to a team.
If you're going to say I'll give you 4 first-round picks, okay, possibly.
I don't think
that's what I'm saying. But
I could see it
you're
like
saying
3rd and 4th.
Yeah, but you're just wanting to do what the listeners are doing. Just dump a bunch of lousy things at me. I said, you're the guy in the fantasy league that picks up 4 guys off the waiver wire and then offers them for your first-round pick.
And that's what you got to do. And we've seen how he fleeced teams before. I mean, he's gave up nothing to get something. So it wouldn't shock me. I could see him fleecing another team like that.
Maybe. Listen, if the team takes, I just think another team.
Out. That's part of it. Like
he wants out, but they don't want to. He wants out, but they don't want to trade him.
Well, he's just going to hold out then at that point. So I mean, you're going to have to give up someone. They're going to lose leverage as time goes on. So they're not going to.
By the way. And I'm not disagreeing that he wants out. My point is there are other teams that would be interested in him who have better assets to offer, which is why I don't think the picks is your best way to go about it. You will probably have to say, we're going to offer a player because our picks aren't as good as their picks.
It's true. It's true. That's why it's like, I will say, but the players on the Eagles do want to see the Howie Roseman go out and get a Myles Garrett out there. We'll see how it shakes out. Everything's going to be coming up quickly here as the combine draft free agency is underway. All right, got to move along to nugget number 2. I want to revisit something, and we were talking about the Sixers just a second ago and Joel Embiid. And I'm just thinking, I'm sitting there last night, and I'm in my bed, headphones on, and I'm just looking up at the ceiling, and I'm like, if Joel Embiid didn't play in the Olympics, would this season have been as much of a disaster as it has been, Mike?
That's a great question, and it's sad that that's what you were putting your headphones on and thinking about.
Listening to white noise, thinking about Joel Embiid. What if he didn't play in the Olympics?
I don't think it would be. I don't think it would be any different. My reasoning is the same thing I said back at the time. He didn't play all that much in the Olympics. People are acting like he was rigorously battling in the Olympics. He didn't play all that much at the Olympics. There was no indication at the Olympics that there was anything wrong with him. Now, maybe that's why he didn't play all that much. I don't know. But I think he would be cognizant enough to be like, hey, I'm just not, I don't know, maybe he isn't cognizant enough. But no, I don't think it would be much different.
I don't know. I mean, if I feel like they would have, do you think you look back at it and you think about it, and did that knee really get worse while he was at the Olympics? Like, I know he didn't play as much as some of the others, but he practiced. That's still putting strain on your knee.
Well,
I mean, that could have,
to be fair,
I think that could have been a part of the cause of now the disaster the knee is, and he's going to have to get another surgery.
To be fair, if he wasn't at the Olympics, he'd be training and practicing, not with just different people. So people act like he would have had his feet up watching TV the whole offseason.
I kind of wish he did, to be honest, because you got to put him in a bubble.
Well, here's the thing. He comes to training camp, he's out of shape. Well, what did you do all offseason? You didn't work on it. So now you want him in a bubble, but if he's not at the Olympics,
him in a bubble. I've always wanted him in a bubble.
Right. If he's not at the Olympics practicing, he's practicing with Drew Hanlon and the stuff that he does in the summer anyway. So he's still on a basketball court doing some sort of basketball activity in the summer.
He is. I'm not saying he's not, but it's more enhanced. You're more ramped up when you're playing on an Olympic team. It's against higher competition, etc. I don't know. It may have been a mistake. It makes you wonder on what would the knee have looked like if he just had a normal offseason, didn't ramp it up to that level of game speed. in the Olympics, playing against the best of the best in the world. It just makes you think, could it have been less, or could this have been avoided for at least a little while longer, or would we have gotten here anyway? I kind of tend to believe we would have gotten here anyway at some point. It just ramped up the process.
Yeah,
no pun
I
intended.
think that I don't know, man. I think this whole thing has been a nightmare for them.
Now, did you see PG go on vacation during the All-Star week?
I didn't see where. I saw people complaining that I saw Paul Hudrick saying, okay, now the guy's getting ripped because he went away on vacation. Like, he's supposed to sit at home for 6 days and just stare at the wall.
Mike, he's supposed to sit in darkness and watch Julio Jones highlights like A.J. Brown does before games. I mean, that's what he does. A.J. Brown sits in darkness before games. I want Paul George to do the same thing. He should be doing the same thing.
Yeah, I don't.
I'm just kidding.
I want Paul. I know Paul George. He probably should have sat down and put his finger in ice the whole time.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know of a season that could have gone any worse. Now they're trying to grab younger players and get faster and get more shooters, signing Lonnie Walker, et cetera. Some of the trades they made at the deadline. I don't know what they're doing. Is this a regular season where you look at it and say, all right, let's just push it to the side and reboot in the offseason and maybe even move on from a Daryl Morey?
I honestly don't have an answer to what they should do because they're in such no man's land right now. They are the 7th worst team in the league, which means top 6 protected. If they get the 7th pick in the draft, they have to give it to Oklahoma City. So they still have to be worse than they are right now. They have the 4th easiest schedule the rest of the way. Now, I can see everybody saying, who the heck, what does that matter? They're losing to bad teams as it is. Now, tonight, they're going to get Embiid, George, and Maxey all back after not playing for a week. Let's see what kind of effort they show tonight and see what they want the second half of this season to be. Tonight should be a big indicator.
Yeah, tonight's going to be a massive game. Massive against Boston. They play Brooklyn on Saturday. I'll be up in the bleeds for that one. But yeah, this has been a massive disappointment to say the least. All right, nugget number 3. Before we get out of here, I'm going to give you what the lineup should be opening day and the rest of the season for the Philadelphia Phillies. I'm going to give you the correct lineup, okay? Overarching, not lefties, righties, just the best lineup that the Phillies could possibly have. All right, you ready? Here we go. Leading off, Kyle Schwarber. Batting second, Trea Turner. Third, Alec Bohm. 4, Bryce Harper. 5, Bryson Stott. 6, JT Realmuto. 7, Nick Castellanos. 8, Max Kepler, and Brandon Marsh rounding things out. All right, Mike, what's wrong with that lineup?
It's the same lineup I saw last year that didn't get it done, and then the year before. So
how are you going to – but what do you change? How are you going to get better? That's a 90-win team right there, 90-plus win team during the regular season.
Yeah, I'm aware of that. I have no problem with that lineup, but I think a change of the lineup would be Turner, Harper, Bohm, Schwarber, Castellanos, Stott, Realmuto, and then whatever you want to do with the last 2 guys. I don't know enough about Kepler. He doesn't hit lefties very well either. Neither does Marsh. So you're going to have a little bit of a hole at the bottom of the lineup. But I am willing to at least start the season like that. I know from a couple of years ago, I got all the way to June, and then I moved Schwarber to the leadoff hole, and I was still good enough to make the playoffs. So why not just see if I could do something different rather than doing the same thing I've been doing over and over again, which has been good, but not good enough.
I think they're good enough to win a World Series.
I didn't say they weren't. I didn't say they weren't good enough. I said they haven't been.
Yeah. It's when the postseason comes. I mean, if everyone's going to hit a brick wall, they're going to hit a brick wall no matter what the lineup is. In my opinion, I think that whatever the lineup is, you got Turner leading off. It does not matter. They're going to find a way to hit a brick wall. I mean, I don't know what else you do. You didn't make enough moves to the offense in the offseason. You didn't go out and get a big bat. You got Max Kepler. That would have made the difference for me. If they went out and got a bat, and maybe they will by the deadline.
I agree. I don't think there was a bat for them really to go get. There was no bat that was acquired by anybody that you were like, why didn't we get that guy? That really would have changed things.
It should have been last trade deadline with Brent Rooker. I'm just sorry. It should have been Brent Rooker at the last.
Well, Rooker signed an extension, so it didn't look like the A's were all that willing to move him. So you got to keep those things in mind too. It takes two to tango. I don't think the A's wanted to trade him. Listen, I'm willing to look at something different. I'm not saying that it's a 1,000% necessity, but Trea Turner has hit leadoff more than any other spot in his career. So it's not ridiculous to say, why not try him there and have Schwarber, who has the most home runs on the team? Maybe you'll have a couple more guys on base. I'm not an anti-Schwarber leadoff guy, but it's not ridiculous to say, hey, maybe he hits fourth. He has a couple guys on base. They score more runs.
It's not crazy. It's not, but I just don't think it's going to be enough to make a massive difference. That's all.
By the way, you have Castellanos, who I'm not the biggest fan of in the world, hitting behind Real Muto. Real Muto has done Zippo the last couple of years to make me feel like he should be hitting in front of anybody. The only reason he doesn't hit ninth is because you got two lousier hitters behind him.
It's true. We'll see how it shakes out. Schwarber should stay in the leadoff hall. That's my point. He should stay there. Turner should stay at second.
All right, well, we'll see. Well, Zolecki was on with us earlier. They are going to go with Turner at least to start the season, it looks like. And the big key here is Harper has agreed to hit number 2. There was people wondering whether he would complain about it, and Harper has agreed that he will hit number 2 because he thinks it's best for the team to win. So if Harper thinks so, guess what? I'm on board.
I guess. He's the GM, too. Remember, he's gotten everybody here.
All right.
First baseman. All right.
Those are the Nuggets for today. Nick's Nuggets. Tomorrow we're live on location at 279 Social Kitchen and Craft Bar, and that's where Nick Nuggets will talk to you there tomorrow on the Sports Bash. See you, man.
All right, Mike. I'll talk to you.
All right, he's back tomorrow with more Nuggets here on the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN. I'm Mike Gill. We got so much happening as the second half of the basketball season is getting ready. But the Four Nations, everybody seems to be interested in the Four Nations. That's tonight at 8 o'clock, USA, Canada. I'm Mike Gill. This is the Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN. 528 Sports Bass Live, 97.3 ESPN. Don't forget, join us tomorrow at 279 Social Kitchen and Craft Bar. New spot, grand opening. We'll have tickets to see the weekend at Lincoln Financial Field this summer. 279 New York Avenue, Galloway. It's the grand opening, live entertainment, awesome food, great stuff. I've been hearing awesome stuff about the spot. I actually saw some pictures. Apparently, they used to have a small little bar in there, like 6-seater. They got like a 30-seat bar now, kitchen, great food, and all sorts of entertainment going to be happening tomorrow. Grand opening, 279 Social Kitchen and Craft Bar. 279 New York Avenue, Galloway, at the old Romanelli's in Galloway. That's where we will be tomorrow. All right, Sixers back tonight against the Celtics. You can listen to the game on 97.3 ESPN if you're still into that kind of stuff. You want to get a little weird with the Sixers tonight? Go for it. Rye or Sigh, another edition here on the Sports Bash. Ryan Rothstein's back. What is on your Rye or Sigh mind today?
Yeah, man, a lot. And, the market, the world is predicting a lot of size from the one and only Mike Gill here today on a Thursday edition. All right, let's get right into it. Four Nations, man. I wish I had more time for activities with you here today because I want to hear all about what Mike Gill thinks all about the Four Nations. We have USA and Canada facing off tonight, dude. I haven't been this invested in a hockey game since Flyers Pens circa 2004. Now, I will say this. I am not buying into this is the biggest game in history, which some pundits are saying. Do you think it is?
If that's the case, that's sad. I have no interest in this game, really. I just can't get in. I just can't get into these like made-up secondary tournaments where I don't know what the winner. What's in it for the winner? What is it? I know it's like national pride, but I mean, half the country hates each other. What are we talking about here? I mean, seriously. Like, do you care about the World Baseball Classic?
I got on board with it. I didn't have. I had lower expectations for the World Baseball Classic, but this came out of nowhere for me. Like there was fights last game. Like
now, let me ask you a question.
Really seriously.
Let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
There are some who believe that the fights were preconceived, that they said like, "Hey, let's get some attention here and let's drop the gloves and try to get some attention." If they were not organic fights, does that bother you?
No, dude, I love that.
So WWE style, let's just have a fake fight here and get some attention.
Off the top rope, 5 minutes in. I don't care. Dude, I don't you think that would make it cooler if that's true? That's much respect.
I just listen. Like it's one of the problems I have with soccer. There's too many tournaments that just don't mean anything. Like I don't know what's going on. This tournament, okay, it's kind of a cool idea. Four nations. Well, the problem is they left some of the best nations out. Russia's not in this thing. Yeah. You got to put the Russian team in there if you want this thing to be worth. Now I get it. Canada's really good. USA's good. Sweden, Finland. They got some good ones in there. But. Look, it added some buzz. They need it. But like the World Baseball Classic, everybody thought that Trout versus Ohtani at bat was going to, like, make baseball the coolest thing ever, and nobody cared.
Yeah. No, that was the most anticlimactic, at-bat and pitcher-batter matchup. But, yeah, interesting. We disagree a little bit there, so I'll chalk you up to one side. Now, this sort of transitions us well because we'll move from the NHL and the Four Nations and the success that's had to the hardwood and the NBA.
On. Do you think the Four Nations will make people want to watch hockey?
No, I can't say yes to that, right?
Right, exactly. No. People are acting like this is the greatest thing ever, blah, blah, and then the Flyers play Saturday, and it's the Flyers. They're not any good.
No, but I think for the moment, if it can capture more fans' attention than otherwise, that's a win. In my mind.
I wish them well.
Yeah, Godspeed. All right, let's move on to the hardwood. There's just been problems up and down in the NBA. They can't seem to do or get anything right, even when Commissioner Adam Silver is at least trying. I don't know. We're not giving out participation trophies here, Mike Gill, but He's trying. He's willing to take chances and take risks. And I didn't hate that all-star product. I know, we're 5-6 days removed from that now, but it ties into the NHL talk. And with the Sixers returning tonight, but is the NBA in serious trouble? We have these conversations a lot, but I just want to throw this question out there. Like, long term, is the NBA in trouble?
They just got an 11-year, $76 billion television contract. No, they are not in trouble. And by the way, we had
money.
We had Keith Smith on earlier, and he's like, look, I'm an old school basketball guy. The game for him as a basketball guy is better, he said, than, back then. He says, I don't know why people are not mad.
I don't know how you can believe that, dude. Do you believe that?
Well, no, I do not like the product right now. I don't know if the Sixers are better. Are we? Is it depending on the team and the market you're in?
A little bit, but no, I think for our conversation right here, you and I can both, put that to the side. I don't care if the Sixers were 60-0 right now. The NBA product is suffering.
It's so why do you? Because for me, I'm just not a fan of the up and down jacking threes, and I don't even have a problem if you're jacking threes. Like I can appreciate watching the Warriors in their prime jacking threes and connecting. Yeah. It's just that teams are jacking threes and are not very good at it.
Yeah, they stink at it. No, absolutely. That's for certain a huge factor. The other piece to it for me, though, is what did we just talk about? The NHL potentially scheduling fights in a game, in a Four Nations matchup. The NBA is the 180 of that. The NBA doesn't try at all for 82 games. And that has caused issues.
Oh, listen, I agree. The lack of effort, I don't think, by the way, people talked a couple of years ago, the load management was a big problem. That's not a huge, I don't hear that being an overriding factor. You don't hear about that as much anymore. I think the gameplay is something that a lot of people are kind of turned off by. I sent you something this morning, I think it was the guy said, what about the idea, and somebody else has brought this up to me, is,
well, that's what I wanted to, are you to talk about what to add or rules? That's what I wanted to
Yeah, the guy said,
into.
How about the dunk be worth 3 and the 3-point shot only be worth 2?
And you get to pick a fan from the stands to box in half court. I mean, I don't know, dude. You can't get too gimmicky, but I do think they need to do something like that. I don't know if they need to raise the rims. How about this idea? You can only go to the bench and you can only make so many substitutions. Sort of like going to the bullpen.
Like a soccer game. Once you're replaced, you can't go back in.
Maybe. I haven't ironed it out yet. But, something to limit coaches and depth. I think that could make it interesting.
You'd have to iron it out a little bit more. Because I've said, listen, the 3-point shot is so ridiculous now. I don't want to watch a game that has 50 3-point shots and you're only making 11 of them. That's what's a bad product. Should they get rid of the
3-point shot?
I don't think you get rid of it, but can you limit it? Can you limit the 3-point shot where you can only take 15 in a game?
I love that idea. It was actually an idea that I had written down. I like that idea, whether it's limiting threes, taking away threes, limiting substitution patterns, right? I do think they need to have a bold idea. I also don't hate, they would never do this because of money, but real quick, I would love them to go to a single elimination playoff.
I don't like that idea as much, but here's what I have said. They need to go to 56 games, okay, or 58 games.
Yeah.
58 games with 1 month of play-in tournament with 12 games. The play-in is now 12 games and
but just consecutive. We've talked about this before.
Where the whole month is play-in. That 1 month is dedicated to the play-in tournament, and it is the whole league. It's not the East versus the West. The play-in tournament being the East versus the West loses, who cares? I see the NBA champion as East versus West. Give me something different. So the pods can be the Atlantic against the Pacific. So it's East and West in the same pod. You play cross East and West, and now you get a true champion. Who's the best team in the league? So Boston could play Cleveland. Denver could play Boston. Denver could play whoever.
Now,
Oklahoma City.
Yeah. What would you change for the in-season tournament? Like, what would the weight or impact of winning that be, if anything?
See, I don't know if there's weight or impact. I think it's just, hey, for the month of December or whatever month. Like, to me, I say do it in December, play the semis on the weekend of Christmas and Christmas Eve. There's nothing on TV Christmas Eve. Own Christmas Eve now. Christmas Eve, that's your championship game, and that's where it is. Every year, Christmas Eve, you're getting the play-in championship. And that whole month of December, it's just playing in-season games because they're doing it on Tuesday nights. The court's one color. On Wednesday night, it's a different color. Yeah. It's a back-to-back. You're not playing against anybody different. You're just saying, hey, the East teams are playing the West teams in the final. There is no rhyme or reason of this tournament.
It's a circus.
But a 58-game season, it's limiting the amount of regular season games, so adding importance to them. Those in-season tournament games will not go towards your record.
Interesting. I don't hate that.
And by the way, to add to it,
you're on a roll. Go ahead.
During October, November, December, my games are only on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, or Fridays. No back-to-backs. I either play Tuesday, Friday, or Wednesday, Friday. No back-to-backs. I'm not competing with football. After January, when football goes away, I will add Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and I will not play on the weekends. No back-to-backs. No back-to-backs. Stay away from football, and then so you can play 56 games. You don't have the back-to-back problem. You have this in-season tournament in December that highlights something, and then when my playoffs get here, now I own it.
I like a lot of what you said. Disagree with some of it. I know we don't have a ton of time. I just want to add one more thing here, though, to this convo because I really enjoy it. I think single elimination would change the game for the better in the playoffs, right? You look at, I just watched a documentary on Netflix about this summer's Olympic team and the Olympics overall. And the added element of single elimination makes it exciting for the players and the fans.
It does. But here's the problem:
Big
you have
time.
single elimination. Now you're basically ending the season in May. I mean,
yeah, it would have to be a complete overhaul, right? It would have to be more than just single elimination, and I don't know what that looks like, to be fair. But
see, I don't think here's the difference, though. I don't think the NBA has a problem with its playoffs. The series, they play hard, and people are into them. Their playoffs are fine. It's their grind to get to the playoffs.
I love their playoffs. You're right. It's competitive. They play hard. But one thing the NBA has always had is sort of air quote everyone knowing who's going to be there in the end because of the best of seven, hasn't it been?
Say that again.
Everyone, I said it so fast, but because of the best of seven, everyone around the game knows which teams are going to be there in the end, and that's a problem, isn't it?
Yes and no. I mean, listen, yes, it used to be like that, but recently you have had like the Heat. They made a run. The Atlanta Hawks, they didn't make it to the championship, but they got to the Eastern Conference Finals. You had more teams coming from not the number 1 or 2 seed.
And just to completely be a hypocrite, it feels like this year could be a weird year for a champion. In the NBA.
Let's see. Yeah, I mean, you got Cleveland who could be in it. Now, of course, Cleveland has won a title before because of the LeBron, but a non-LeBron Cleveland team. You do have Boston still in the mix. Oklahoma City's been kind of knocking on the door.
Yep.
I don't know if this is finally their year. Memphis is one of the better teams.
Minnesota, Golden State, you know.
I don't think Minnesota. Golden State with Butler now, they're the 10 seed, by the way, so they have to get out of the play. But, hey, Jimmy Butler has taken a team to the finals before. It's a little wide open, but I think Oklahoma City gets there from the West, and I think Boston gets there from the East. But, see, other than Cleveland and Boston, I think there's a draw. I'm not a big the Knicks. I didn't love what they did this all. I know they got a lot of great players, but I thought they lost some of the toughness that they had, and I don't think they're better than the two teams in front. That doesn't mean they're not better than they were last year. I just think that the reason they were good last year is because of some of the guys that they lost.
No, I completely agree with you. Honorable mention, Trea Turner leadoff.
Oh, no doubt about it. I'm for you have the same guys back that have failed. I have to try something. If I didn't bring in anybody new, I got to do something different to try to mix it up a little bit. So definitely Turner, Harper, Bohm, Schwarber, Castellanos. That's my 5.
I would love to see Bryson Stott in leadoff.
We went over this a little bit yesterday. His numbers even when he was healthy 2 years ago, his on-base percentage like .319, just not good enough. I mean,
no.
I know that he's the guy that everybody like wants to love and wants to be the next Utley, and I just don't think he's that guy.
Wow. All right. You seem more out on him than I am. I don't think he's the next Utley. I've just always had such an appreciation for him.
I like him, but here's the thing. He's not better than Trea Turner. He's not better than Harper. He's not better than Bohm. He's not better than So why am I hitting him at the top of the lineup?
Well, ideally to optimize those guys. Gabe Kapler. Optimal.
I'm optimizing them by putting them lower in the lineup?
I don't know. I felt like I sounded smart for a second.
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
I mean, I had this battle with Nuggets a little while ago. He wants to keep the lineup virtually the same. He doesn't want to move Schwarber out of the leadoff hole. He wants to keep Turner number 2. I'm not saying I'm not anti-Schwarber leading off. I'm not that guy. My point is,
you've been at times.
No. I have no problem with Schwarber leading off. Here's what I say. I am okay with just trying this lineup out. A couple years ago, Schwarber was not hitting leadoff. Then in the beginning of June, they said they were going to put him back at the leadoff spot, and that kind of reignited them. They could try him not in the leadoff spot and then make a move back to him. So it's worth trying to see if this does something for them.
I also would say, but why though? Right? Like, look at all of the success teams have had that he's been on when he bats lead. It's interesting. It's
By the way, Turner, the most at bats he has is out of the leadoff spot in his career. So It's not like he stinks and has never hit leadoff before. He has been his best in the leadoff spot. So are you not getting as much out of him? And maybe, by the way, Turner is your best hitter and getting him more at bats out of that leadoff. Look, listen, Harper just simply has said he does not want to bat leadoff. And
he shouldn't.
Well, there's some people out there that think your best hitter hits leadoff because they get the most at bats.
Yeah.
Harper doesn't want to hit leadoff, so he's going to hit number 2, it looks like, which will get him more at bats than he would if out of the 3-hole.
Yeah, I don't love him at 2 either, but hey, they're shaking things up, and I'm not against that, dude.
Well, other than Turner, who if you're going to hit him 1, you really don't. I mean, you could say Stott, but now the one problem with Stott hitting at the top of the lineup is you got all those lefties. You got Stott, you got Harper, you got Schwarber, and you theoretically want all of them hitting in the top 4.
Right, and that's also an argument that you can make for Stott leadoff.
Because you still have the same problem, though. If you hit Stott leadoff, you hit Turner number 2, then you have Harper 3 and Schwarber 4. Now you have 3 lefties out of your top 4.
Man. Yeah, I couldn't piece that puzzle together. Yep.
Yeah. All right, man. I think I side on most of them. I maybe ride on one of them.
I like it. Go Sigh or go home.
All right, we'll do it again tomorrow. Rye or Sigh here, Ryan Rothstein, at Wise Rye on the X platform. Thanks, man.
Thank you, man.
All right, we're back tomorrow. We'll be at 279 Social Kitchen and Craft Bar, 2 to 6. I'm looking forward to this, man. New place opening up. Place looks awesome. We'll have tickets to see the weekend. Stop out. I think it's going to be packed. It's their grand opening. I think it's going to be a good crowd. They got live entertainment. We got tickets for that. They got a $100 credit they're giving out as well. So great opportunity to come out, see the show, just hang out. Happy Hour Friday. Why not? Bet365 plays of the day are coming up next here on the Sports Bash. All right, get ready to get out of here, Josh. How we do? Last night you weren't here. I told you my picks. I had Washington State Gonzaga under 163.5. That finished like in the 140s. So that was a win, and I lost the Lakers Hornets last night. So I went 1-1 last night. How we do? I didn't know what I had the day before.
Yeah, you went 2-0 the day before. Illinois and Wisconsin hit the over. Michigan State won by more than 3.5. So overall now, Mike, you are 111-75-1.
111-75-1. Play these games. Thank me later. Nets Cavs over 225.5. Sixers Celtics over 225. And Hornets Denver under 229.5.
Run that by me again.
Nets Cavs over 225.5. Sixers Celtics over 225.5. Denver Hornets under 229.5.
Hornets is under, you're saying.
Yes, they played last night, back-to-back for the Hornets.
All right.
That's my Bet 365 plays of the day. Tomorrow, we are live at 279 Social Kitchen and Craft Bar at 279 New York Avenue in Galloway, their grand opening. They got live entertainment. Stop out and see us. We will be live. We'll have tickets to see The Weeknd. They've also got that $100 dining experience they're going to be giving away. Menu looks awesome. Place looks awesome. Hopefully, you'll be able to stop out at some point tomorrow and see the show live on location. 279 Social Kitchen and Craft Bar. Happy Hour Friday. Right here with the Sports Bash. Got a busy weekend coming up with the sports returning. Sixers tonight versus Celtics. Sixers are back on Saturday against the Nets. Flyers against Edmonton. Sixers Bulls on Monday. Flyers on Tuesday. Sixers on Wednesday. Flyers on Thursday. It's good to have everybody back again from the breaks. All right, that'll do it for me. Josh has game night coming up next. Who you got coming up?
We got Rob Motti coming up, and then also we're talking with Artie O'Cal. He's covering the USA-Canada game tonight in Boston.
Four Nations. So he'll have a preview of that, plus Rob Motti on the NFL and the Eagles. That's coming up tonight on Game Night next here on the Sports Bash Live. By the way, Cowboy fans, Zach Martin has announced he is retiring. So you got that going for you, which is nice.
Couldn't happen with a better fan base.
Enjoy the hockey tonight. If you're watching the Sixers, God bless you. I'll be there with you. Painful. I know. Have a great night, everybody.